On This Week in Startups. We've been doing live shows, so if you're watching this on replay, I basically saw a lot of people having great success going live consistently on YouTube. And I thought, we've been doing This Week in Startups for a decade. It's now 5 days a week. And I don't actually talk to the fans of the show, except when, they follow me into a bathroom or ask for a selfie on the streets of, whatever city I happen to be traveling to. But I thought it'd be really great to let you watch me record the podcast. Now, in the podcast, we polish it up a little bit. It's not NPR level polish. We don't do 20 hours of interviews and then make a 6-season arc with people saying one sentence and dropping dramatic music in between it. I find that stuff all pretty corny and manipulative, if I'm being honest. I'm not into the serial or whatever podcasting genre. I find it just super manufactured and a little bit too preachy, quaint, whatever. I just not my cup of tea. So what I do like is the live interaction. So when we record our podcast, if I mispronounce somebody's name, they'll tell me, hey, you mispronounced the name. Say it a second time. I'll say it a second time. Or if I'm reading a quote and I screw it up, I'll read it a second time and we'll clip it up and we take out some breathing, or if I were to sneeze on the podcast, that kind of stuff. But we don't take out the content. So what we decided to do is turn on this live feed and have a conversation with you every day around 10 a.m. Sometimes I have to do it earlier at 9. Other times I'm running late because I was out playing poker all night and I'm exhausted and I'm just not even camera ready. And I'm just trying to get some caffeine in my system so that I can actually put on a decent performance, because I'm trapped now. I don't know if you've realized this. I'm trapped. We sold the show out for the year 5 days a week. Now we're talking about doing a Sunday show. I'm recording 5, 6, 7 times a week. So I'll start my quick time. And I don't have a co-host here. Rachel's, doing some interesting field reporting, like a correspondent. That's great. We'll keep having her step in, but I need a co-host here. Let's be honest. It needs to be a co-host. I need somebody to be able to do this show when I'm not here. If I go on a vacation or if I get sick, like I got to tell you right now, we're walking on a tightrope. I got sick the other week, and you guys might have noticed I looked a little bleary-eyed, and I basically had a flu of some kind. It kind of went through the whole house, and there was no COVID. We took 1 million COVID tests. But I had to do the show. People were like, God, you sound terrible. And I was like, yeah, Kara Swisher sounds terrible. She got the flu too. And then she had to do her conference. Like, this is what happens when you're the host of the show. The show must go on. But I'm feeling good about it. I'm enjoying it. And the most encouraging part about doing this live is really the Noti gang. And so I'm just going to give it up one time for the Noti gang, who really makes me want to get on air. And I'm looking at it right now. When you see me looking off to the side here, I'm looking at the Restream interface. So this is my Dell monitor stacked on the side here, and there's another Dell monitor here, and then that's the teleprompter. So when I'm reading the news, I'm looking right into the teleprompter. It gives a nice view here. Got it. Oh, you like my Dire Straits shirt? Thanks. Yeah, that's the Dire Straits on every street tour shirt. And I'm down to 185 today. Yeah. 196 when I came back from 196 when I came back from Italy. Today I saw 185 on the scale for the first time in 12 years. So that was a pretty great moment for me, I'll be honest. All right, let's go through my noties here. Let's talk to my noties. Let's see. Jeremy, you're Noti 1. Christopher, N2. Alvindiction, 3. Lita, Noti 4. Ashul, back again, Noti 5. Alphonse, Noti 6. Toby, Noti 7. George, Noti 8. Bruno, Noti 9. Greenhouse, Noti 10. Calm Pips. What was I up to 10? 11? Noti 11. Joe, Noti 12. Jay, Noti 13. Chris, Noti 14. ENIAC, Noti 15. Noti 16 is Serge, Dog. Hyun, Berglund, you're Noti 17. Menez, 18. Roberto, you screwed up. You said Jason, not Noti. Looking good, J-Cow. Congrats on Joe says that. Zen Prophet, Noti 19. Zen Prophet back again. Table Salt back again, Noti 20. Higgins, Will, Connor. D-Man, you were right behind them. So in our first Noti 10, we will now have. Did we send out the gold belly Peking duck? Rachel, Justin, has that been sent out? I'm going into boss mode. You gotta come on air.
Did
Call your
not.
name. I call your name. You gotta come on air.
That's
Cameras up.
definitely not.
It has not been sent out yet, and I will also to make sure we got that in our DMs because I did not see them in our DMs.
Oh, we are.
Who
He
was
is in
it?
the DMs. I
Who
see
was
it right
the
now.
person who won?
Okay,
Who
then
won?
we're good.
We got the address. I'll send it right now.
All right, guys. Same day. Boom. Same day. Get my corporate card. Ship it same day. And don't cheap out. Like if they have a 2-person meal and a 4-person meal, send the fucking 4-person meal, okay? This is the Noti gang we're talking about here. So now I got 20 Noties. I'm going to ask them a question. I could have done Dire Straits as the question. I could have said, what's Jason's favorite band?
Can you make a skeptical face, Jason? I just want to use it for a thumbnail for this.
You need me to do a skeptical face?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Skeptical fit, paid actor right here.
Amazing. Thank you. Good.
Oh.
That wasn't skeptical. That was just me being me. Who, me? Skeptical?
You ain't Noti or nothing like that.
Noti or nothing. So I should have done my Noti. All right. I'll do another one. This is for my Noti gang. So I'll let anybody who's in the first 20 do this. And today you'll win my favorite gadget of last year, which was my Ember mug. This is my Ember mug. It's a smart mug. See, it's a smart mug because it has a light on it. The LED means it's smart. No, it's the stupidest thing in the world. This is like a Silicon Valley HBO show gag. It lets you set the temperature of your coffee. I kid you not. And listen, Ember Mug and Gold Belly are not sponsors of this goddamn show, and that is a tragedy because I would sell the fuck out of an Ember Mug or Gold Belly, but do not put that in the show. We're just going to do it on the live stream. But for my sales team, I mean, what a blown opportunity, man. I would be moving product for those two companies. Anyway, what's great about the Ember Mug, and I went with the copper, is it's got a big fat battery in here. And it charges very simply in a little stand. Actually, I can unplug the stand here and show you. It's like a little stand. You put this over here, and you put this in here. And then you set your temperature. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? You ever get busy and you're drinking a cup of coffee? And then you go take a sip of your coffee and you realize, I haven't had a sip of that coffee in an hour. This thing is like lukewarm. I mean, I want cold brew in a frosted mug, or I want 140-degree coffee. There is nothing in between that is acceptable. And so I would take 3 sips of my coffee, and then, I'd be like, get me another cup of coffee. That's it. I'm not going to drink cold coffee. I'll drink iced coffee. And then even with iced coffee, it starts getting watered down. I throw it right in the garbage. I start over, right in the garbage, in the sink, done. I start a new fresh one. And I make cold brew at home. It's very simple to do. So in the Noti gang, I want you to tell me what my favorite live
Red Farm
album
is shipped,
is.
by the way. Red Farm
What?
is shipped.
Red Farm is
shipped.
What is my favorite live album? The Noti gang should know my favorite live album. I think they should know that. They should know my favorite live album, I think they should know my favorite live album. Let's see if anybody in the Noti gang, anybody who is in the first 20 or 30 Noties, if they guess my favorite live album, I will beer? Send them. What did you say? You're not in the Noti gang, Charles. Don't guess.
Are you drinking a beer?
I'm actually. I'm too festive.
How very English.
This is Fever Tree Ginger Ale. I would sell the fuck out of Fever Tree too. Yeah, you ever? There it is. Man. Alchemy. Somebody got it immediately.
I thought it was a live version, wasn't it? I thought isn't it a live at the Royal Albert Hall or something?
Nope. Alchemy is the one. That's my favorite live album. So whoever said Alchemy first, if they were in the Noti gang, if they were the first 25, they got to be both, right? So is somebody looking at this will figure it out and tell us did they say Noti in the first 25? And did they then get Alchemy? So Alchemy, Pink Floyd is a good guess. Alchemy. right. So somebody said, I know it's Mark Knopfler. And then the first one was Jeremy Davidson. And the next one was Zen Prophet. No, Zen Prophet got it wrong. They said The Who, which also, Alvin was the next.
Jeremy Davidson was in the Noti Gang.
Okay, and then Jeremy Davidson also got Alchemy, so Jeremy Davidson wins the Ember Mug. Congratulations, we're shipping you from Amazon an Ember Mug. But you know what? There's 2 of them now, so I don't know which one to send, but fuck it, just send them the Ember Mug. All right, there you go. So I'm not going to do it every day, but I will do a little JCal trivia.
Surge Dog says that they were not bragging, but they were the first like. So maybe we need to nudge people to like. We've been live for like minutes now.
What do you mean like? Oh, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. On the YouTube, if you go to youtube.com/thisweekend, thumbs up for your squad. Thumbs up for your squad. Pull the squad up on the camera. Show me if we can do a 5-piece here. Got a 5-piece for me, Charles, in the picture in the picture? Can you 5-piece it? There's 1, 2 of us, 3 of us. And there's the 4th. Come around the horn for the 5th. Can we 5-piece it? Wow, it does work. No. Nick is.
It will, but
Nick has to accept. Got it. So what do? You just sends an invite to them to turn them on.
Well, they can turn their video on and off themselves.
Look at that. Oh, look at it. Perfect 5-piece. So there it is, everybody. This is our little live band here. On the left, Tom Selleck mustache.
Justin, your mic is going nuts right now.
Justin from Williamsburg, Brooklyn. On the 1s and the 2, behind the crew, you got Sir Charles, Rachel, down in PA. I'm probably not supposed to say where you are. Down in, maybe you have said. Sorry. And Hoboken Nick. In the hoodie. Everybody in the hoodie. So that's your squad. There it is. There's your squad. Sir Charles has a nickname. Haven't given Justin a nickname yet. I may just go with Selleck. It could stick. Would that stick, Nick?
No.
Okay.
Probably
well,
not.
Big Nick has always been what I've called the Big Nick since he was a little kid. You like Big Nick, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, Big Nick. Rachel? We got to come up with something with the correspondent, like reporting Rachel or something. Rachel reporting. That's a good one. Yeah, Rachel reporting. We got the Sir Charles. I got 2 more to go. Whoa, I don't know if you're watching what's happening here on the stream, Justin, but damn, Justin is hot. Just came in. I just want to let people know that this is not an internal HR issue. This is the fans. I'm not responsible for the fans having crushes on. Please then profit. No, do not go there. Okay.
We might have to stop this live stuff.
This live thing is going to go off the rails for sure. Thank God we don't have an HR department. Outsourced HR. The fans have spoken. I am not growing a mustache. I'm not growing a mustache. That's not happening. I'll grow a mustache when we're the number 1 episode on the tech. All right, here we go. We do the Facebook. Francis Haugen.
Haugen.
How is spelled How, so we can just do that. Haugen. Got it. Just having dyslexia fucking sucks. It's so embarrassing. If everything in my life wasn't so good, I would be really ashamed of my inability to pronounce words. If I wasn't such a good fucking writer and good on camera and a good speaker, I would be really embarrassed about my inability to pronounce people's names. I find it just paradoxical. Mike Solana. Yeah, I don't know what Mike Solana's thing is. That's Peter Thiel's intern, right?
I think invited him.
You invited him on the show, right? So
Yeah,
Peter Thiel's intern is going to be on the show. I mean, really? Peter Thiel's intern? I love how Peter Thiel has nothing to say about Facebook.
Great writer. Mike Solana, great writer.
I think Solana's, I like Solana, but he got into it with me today. He's like,
He did.
He subtweeted me, and I was like, no, I don't care who you are. Don't fucking subtweet me, kid. You know @Jason. I mean, I didn't work so hard to get the @Jason handle to have you fucking subtweet me. You know how to spell @Jason. Let's go. Comes up first, Solana. He's like sneaking into Sax's. Did you see that today? He snuck into Sax's replies.
No, I did not.
I saw
He's
it.
like
Yeah.
sneaking it. Yeah, he's sneaking into Sachs's replies. He's like, you have to talk to your co-host of All In about this.
Oh God.
And I was like, yo, kid, don't disrespect me. You want to say something to me, you put my fucking ad handle on. You say it to my face. Don't go to like around the corner and then start talking shit about me. Because I will walk around the corner at some point. Somebody will tell me you're talking shit and I will be in your face. So just might as well fucking be upfront about it. He was a little bit out of line. A little bit. You should, this is Mike Solana. David Sachs, you should talk to that guy who produces your podcast with Jamal. I don't think he fully understands this point. It's like literally like these fucking teal Sachs.
Well, do you fully understand the point? Maybe you should.
Of course, I
reference
understand the
tweet.
point. The pissing in your pants. The better analogy is Zuckerberg pissed in the well that was the goodwill for the tech industry. And if we're looking at an instance with Zuckerberg, it is impossible to not take into account all of his previous bad behavior. This is a repeat offender. So you cannot give them the benefit of the doubt when they cover up research or they're having a bad impact on society. And if you bring up shit like the fashion industry or modeling industry or the fashion magazines, you know what? They were held to task 20 years ago over body image issues, and they committed to making changes in it, and they have. If you look at that industry, what are they being criticized for now, the fashion industry? They're being criticized for being too body positive and celebrating people who are like absolutely undeniably obese. So they have overreacted in that industry. If people have body issues because of the media you're putting out, it's your responsibility to, or your platform, it's your responsibility to think about that. And to Facebook's credit, they did studies, but covering up the studies or not, really solving the problem is the issue here. And it's an important open dialogue. All right, let's not leave in the dugout. Here we go.
All right, before you go,
okay, you're getting me all worked
make
up.
sure you. So a big thing to touch on here is in the beginning.
Mike Solana, just to be clear, Mike Solana is Peter Thiel's event producer, right? He's an event producer. Like if you need a location, he'll location scout for you. Like he'll set up the caterers. He's an event producer. Event producer Mike Solana. That's what he does, right? He's an event producer.
All I know him from is his Substack, which is good, and his Twitter.
I'm event producer and shit poster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same title. It's two of my
I was going to
titles.
say that's basically what you are.
That's basically what I do.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And on the margins, might invest in companies. That's essentially exactly.
Yeah,
what you do.
exactly. Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, the couple
We're
points
20
you should
minutes
hit
into
on,
this, and we haven't done
they're
a
all in
story.
there. Haugen isn't really calling for that.
Be on
much.
camera when
She
you're on camera,
specific-
please. If you're going to talk,
Okay,
please turn on your
sorry.
camera.
I was just going to do this quickly. She specifically said, she's like, I don't want Facebook to be broken up. She
Right.
wants to have them publish all their internal research to a regulatory oversight body. She wants to reinstate soft interventions like Twitter. What Twitter does is they force, before you reshare like a political or a COVID post,
Yeah.
you actually have to click on the article before you can retweet it, right?
Perfect.
So
I
she
think
wants
it's actually
soft
not a bad
intervention
idea.
like that.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty simple. And then she wants Congress to create a regulatory body, kind of akin to the SEC overseeing financial markets, of people like her that could oversee Facebook and Twitter and like make their algorithms, less crazy or.
Yeah, I think the algorithm is the key here. I mean, listen. All right, let's.
But what I'm saying is, nothing that she's proposing is like
Yes.
she's not like this company needs to be destroyed. Like it's
right.
all
This
pretty
idea that she
light.
is doing this for fame, fortune, or some ulterior motive, or because she's got an axe to grind because they fired her. I mean, she's easily employable. She's an HBS graduate who worked at Google and 7 other important places. Like this Mike Solana and everybody else, like kind of dunking on her that she's like a woman.
Well, she's not only getting dunked on from the pro Facebook people. Mother Jones also trashed her yesterday and said she wasn't going far enough. So I feel like you can make a good point.
Yeah,
where,
that's a fair point.
If both sides,
no, she is moderate. I think
killing
her
you a little bit, then that's kind of a good signal
that's a good signal which is what I said Monday, that she's credible. Right? I feel it did not. She felt highly credible at first glance. Like, of course, other cards could turn over. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
3, 2. All right, in our first 3, 2. In our first story, Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen went before the Senate yesterday and did a great job. I think she was well-spoken and I think moderate in her proposed solutions for the challenges of social media Facebook circled the wagons and came out swinging. And in fact, many of the Facebook surrogates, the people who are one or two steps removed from Facebook, were out there attacking her, including their PR team. So let's break down the hearing before we get into what's going to happen to the whistleblower, because it's almost like a classic playbook to discredit and attack, diminish and maybe even try to demoralize these whistleblowers. And that is the strategy, and it's happening, which we knew would start happening after Sunday. So on Monday's show, we here at This Week in Startups, we did cover Frances's 60 Minutes appearance. That was the warm-up, obviously, before she went before the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Protection for about 2 hours. And we're going to break down some of the key moments here and maybe talk about some of the insights. Before we do that, we should be clear about what her goals are. And I think that's part of this. We are obviously now entering the phase of attack the messenger, and let's figure out what the messenger's motivation is, right? And I guess that's valid, right? You do have to think about who is making these claims. Why are they making these claims? Why are they making these claims now? And maybe what are they hoping to get out of this? Sometimes you will see this and somebody has got an axe to grind. Maybe they were fired. Maybe they didn't get their stock options. They didn't get a promotion. Or sometimes it's virtuous and they are doing this because they believe it's in the best interest of society, or maybe they have some ideological position. But let's hear it from Frances herself. A 1-minute clip, and I'll talk to you on the other side.
Time at Facebook, I came to realize a devastating truth. Almost no one outside of Facebook knows what happens inside of Facebook. The company intentionally hides vital information from the public, from the US government, and from governments around the world. The documents I have provided to Congress prove that Facebook has repeatedly misled the public about what its own research reveals about the safety of children, the efficacy of its artificial intelligence systems, and its role in spreading divisive and extreme messages. As long as Facebook is operating in the shadows, hiding its research from public scrutiny, it is unaccountable. Until the incentives change, Facebook will not change. These problems are solvable. A safer, free speech respecting, more enjoyable social media is possible. But there's one thing that I hope everyone takes away from these disclosures. It is that Facebook can change, but is clearly not going to do so on its own. Congress can change the rules that Facebook plays by and stop the many harms it is now causing. We now know the truth about Facebook's destructive impact.
Okay, this is, I think, critically important. Number one, she believes the problems are solvable. She's credible and believes the problems are solvable. So she is not asking for Facebook to be broken up. She is actually saying we can make a social media landscape that is less polarized and that is safer for everybody, and that maybe doesn't have downstream effects on mental illness or politics, elections, misinformation. She's an expert on the subject. She's highly credible, and she believes it's solvable. I actually think it's less solvable. I think this is just one of these problems that, we've never had as a society. I don't know, billions of people on these platforms. Even if it was tens of millions of people, there's never been a town square that's 10 million people, and that one tweet or one TikTok or one story on Instagram or Snapchat could become the number one media object in the world. Same thing with YouTube. This has never existed in the history of humanity. She thinks it's solvable. I think it's less solvable, than she does. And her solution for solving it. Let's talk about that second piece. So A, she believes it's solvable. B, her solution is not breaking up Facebook. It's forcing Facebook to be more transparent and to publish all their research. So that is very interesting to me. This is not the AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, all rich people are bad, all capitalism is bad, giant conglomerates are bad, break them up, regulate them, tax them, shut them down. She's clearly not part of that camp. You do not get the Bernie bro, Elizabeth Warren, AOC squad vibe from her, do you? You don't get an anti-tech vibe from her either. The vibe I'm getting is, let's work together to solve this. So when she gets more specific, she says, listen, Congress should have a regulatory body where people like her can work on making algorithms safer. Anybody disagree with that? Anybody disagree that something this powerful and unprecedented should have some regulation? I mean, I'm not for over-regulation, but we're in a situation where there's no regulation. And you've got to remember with Facebook is, I wouldn't say left or right leaning, they're Peter Thiel leaning when it comes down to it. Zuckerberg and Thiel and that whole crew are very much in favor of no regulation, and they're kind of Ayn Randian in their objectivist. You can look up those fancy words. It basically means people should be, talented people should be allowed to do what they want and not be stopped by people in their ivory towers like politicians or the media or professors, right? They are anti-cathedral, and they're, more about the marketplace and the bazaar. Not bizarre as in strange, but the bazaar is in the marketplace of ideas. But I think for the rest of us, cigarettes, maybe we should regulate those a little bit. And the vape pens, there should be some regulation there. Those are pretty bad for society. Social media, it's having some weird effects. We should definitely think about it because the Russians are using it to screw with the elections. We should definitely have some regulation there. Her second idea is just publish all the research. I mean, is anybody against that? I mean, the only people who I could think would be against that is people who want to front run the research, like the internal people at Facebook. I mean, I think the reason Facebook is doing the research is twofold. One, they care. I do actually think that they care about what the research says. But two, I think they want to control the research and they want to control the researchers. So this is like, keep your enemies closer kind of situation for Facebook. If they bring the researchers in-house and they're funding them and they work for them, well, then they can keep this from escaping and they can control it and they can front run it, which is exactly what they did with this research. They are front running this research. They are massaging it. And that is why this person felt like they needed to front run, or they needed to leak the front running of the information. Does that make sense? I think we can all kind of see what Facebook is doing there. Buy the researchers, bring them in-house. And it's not great that you're paying for research that is working against you, which was Zuckerberg's reply. And we'll get into his response. Like, why would we pay for this? Why would we pay for research if we didn't care? It's a pretty good defense. I'll be totally honest. And it's half true, I think. I think they do want to know, and they do want to pay for this research because it is helpful for them. And I do think, they do have, I wouldn't say they have the users and the citizens' best interests in mind. I think they think first about the size of their company and the growth of it. And I think second, they do think about the customers, but it's in that order. So this is a very interesting strategy and a highly effective one, clearly, because here we are. Facebook has reached critical mass. There's no way to stop it. It's going to take decades, like literally 2 or 3 decades. If you really wanted to stop Facebook, it would take 2 decades probably, because look at what happened with AOL and Yahoo. People are still, I went to Yahoo Finance yesterday. Some people are still using the AOL email addresses. Like these tech companies, when they hit scale, take a decade or two to come in for a landing and get below, whatever number of users or revenue. And third, she wants Facebook to reinstate something called soft interventions. What's a soft intervention? You remember where before you retweeted a story, it'd say, hey, why don't you take a look at the story and read it, dummy, before you tweet it, to kind of get people to be more thoughtful. And I would think warning labels would also fall under soft interventions, or for more information and linking to a credible source would be another soft intervention. I think another soft intervention would be saying, this is disputed information. This person has been suspended this many times for these things. So these kind of soft interventions are a way to steer things maybe and to throttle how quickly misinformation would spread. So the second somebody starts talking about, vaccines, if it said, hey, here's a link to people studying vaccines. Here's a link to the CDC, supposed credible sources. Obviously, we can have a really vibrant debate of what is a credible source in the world or a credible institution, right? After we've seen some institutions fail us, or there's corruption in institutions. So who are you going to link to? I mean, some people trust the Wikipedia with its anonymous editors, or, editors using pseudonyms and everything in between. There are people out there who trust the information on Wikipedia more than they trust the information from the government. In fact, I could ask my live audience watching here, which do you trust more, a Wikipedia page or a politician? If you got the same information, would you trust the Wikipedia version or the politician's version on average? Just on average, Wikipedia page through anonymous process or politicians? It's an interesting question. So these are pretty simple ideas, and not all that dramatic or controversial. In fact, Mother Jones, which is I think it's best described as a socialist publication. I think they're kind of like that Jacobian or whatever that socialist publication is. They're the far left of the far left. They thought Haugen was going too soft. The Facebook whistleblower doesn't have the solution. Revolving door regulations never make anything better. If you believe that Facebook is producing significant harm, the solution that follows should probably be significant as well, is what they're saying in this story, as Evan Green, deputy editor of Fight for the Future, I don't know what that is, told me rectifying Facebook's invasive privacy practices. Sorry, you pulled it off the screen when I was reading it.
You're only supposed to read the orange part. Sorry.
Okay. Facebook. As Evan Green, deputy director of Fight for the Future, told me, rectifying Facebook's invasive privacy practices could require a privacy law strong enough to effectively kill Facebook's current business model. So they're kind of jumping the fence. It's not like 90% of people aren't having a, decent or good experience on Facebook, seeing their family's photos. It's a little ridiculous to think about doing something as draconian as shutting down Facebook. I think, the algorithm being more transparent, the studies being transparent would be the next logical step here, right? That is the next logical step. And there are things you can do to make things more transparent that solve problems. I'll give Facebook some credit here. The Facebook ad library, if you just type in Facebook ad library, you can see every ad and the creative placed on for every different company or organization. They did this for politics to make sure that people didn't do these crazy Clinton ads again, that the Russians were buying, to try to create more strife here in our country on our original sin, racism, probably the worst part of America's history. I think most people would agree. And this database has now made it really hard to do smarmy ads on Facebook because it will be revealed. If you're doing something really crazy on Facebook, it's right there in the database. You can't place ads on Facebook without them being public anymore. Well, if that's the case for ads, let's do it for the research. Let's make all the research public and have a town square where we debate it. So if Haugen is getting hate from Facebook and pro-Facebook surrogates, and then she's getting hate from the anti-Facebook crowd, I think that means her position is pretty moderate, I would say. And Senator Amy Klobuchar, who I am increasingly impressed with. I think, I don't know her exact politics, but when I see her asking questions, she tends to be well prepared, it seems. And so here's the Democrat from Minnesota, and she starts her questioning with an impassioned statement. These things are also performative, about big tech lobbyists in D.C. And this to me was quite informative. 30 seconds, see you on the other side.
We have not done anything to update our privacy laws in this country, our federal privacy laws. Nothing, zilch, in any major way. Why? Because there are lobbyists around every single corner of this building that have been hired by the tech industry. Mm-hmm. We have done nothing when it comes to making the algorithms more transparent, allowing for the university research that you referred to. Why? Because Facebook and the other tech companies are throwing a bunch of money around this town and people are listening to that.
Yeah, I would love to see her name names there. Did she take money from these lobbyists? Does the person sitting next to her take money from these lobbyists? The fact that there's hundreds, thousands of folks lobbying, and our privacy is not being protected, and there's not new privacy legislation. When you compare what's happening in California and in Europe, privacy is a serious issue. We should have some legislation around that. Is there anybody here who wouldn't want more privacy regulation so that their information was kept more private and not recorded? I don't think anybody listening to this stream right now in this podcast wouldn't want to see more privacy protection. So here she is asking Haugen about Facebook and Instagram's impact on teen girls and body issues, which this is the reason why I think Facebook has now hit a very different moment in time. This could be the Icarus moment for Facebook, where they just flew a little too close to the sun. It's one thing, to ban Trump or not ban Trump, or to have Russians buying ads. We can debate those issues. They're super hyper political, but there's nobody who wants to see young teen girls have body issues, bulimia, anorexia. These are like the worst things in the world, right? Like nobody wants this to be increased in the world. And the fact that now there is a link between Instagram and teen girls' anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia is pretty damning. And this really does, I think, lean people more towards the cigarette company analogy or metaphor, or in their mind framing, versus the car metaphor that, Mosseri, I think, the leader of Instagram, was sort of pushing. So here's 65 seconds from Klobuchar and Haugen. I'll see you on the other side.
Major issue that's come out of this eating disorders. Studies have found that eating disorders actually have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness for women. And I led a bill on this with Senators Capito and Baldwin that we passed into law. And I'm concerned that this algorithms that they have pushes outrageous content, promoting anorexia and the like. I know it's personal to you. Do you think that their algorithms push some of this content to young girls?
Facebook knows that the engagement-based ranking, the way that they pick the content in Instagram for young users, for all users, amplifies preferences. And they have done something called a proactive incident response, where they take things that they've heard, for example, like, can you be led by the algorithms to anorexia content? And they have literally recreated that experiment themselves and confirmed, yes, this happens to people. So Facebook knows that they are leading young users to anorexia content.
Yeah, so this is the perniciousness of the algorithm. When we build algorithms here in the technology industry, you're not really saying, here's what I want the algorithm, here's how I want the algorithm to interpret the world. That's not really what's happening. It's more outcome-based. So you're telling the algorithm, run a series of experiments, look at all the data, and if somebody were to click on X, would they click more? If they click on Y or Z, do they click more? Okay, after clicking on X, if they click on Y, do they stay on the service longer? It's just might is right. The length of your session is what matters. The frequency at which you come back is what matters. We're just looking at outcomes with these algorithms. We're not looking at the journey, right? We're not looking at how you got there. We're looking at where you wound up. And if where you wound up was on YouTube, the intellectual dark web, or worse, that's bad, right? And there was a specific case with Ben Shapiro. And if you watch Ben Shapiro's content and listen, he pushes the envelope on being anti-trans and, some edgy sort of positioning socially. You might then get like Milo Yiannopoulos, who went from being, like a kind of a cheeky blogger when I met him in the 2000s to being like straight up like hanging out with white supremacists, and just crazy. All of that kind of algorithmic shaping of your behavior and leading you down rabbit holes has been proven over and over and over again. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the studies, they all show an algorithm will lead you down the path of incredible Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits bootlegs, or it could lead you to white supremacy, anorexia, body dysmorphia, or some obscure sexual preference or niche sexual preference that maybe you didn't want your children to be looking at on TikTok. Literally, there's a Wall Street Journal article about that. There has been entire New York Times series on the YouTube rabbit hole and where that will take you, and of course now Instagram. So if you look at that, 3 different platforms, what do they have in common? They're all algorithmically generated content social networks: TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. All 3 of them rely on the algorithm to increase your time on site. They all worship at the altar of the algorithm and the outcome. Algorithms and outcomes are a great way to build a large business. It's not a great way to build a high-functioning society. So that is what the world is coming to, something we've all known in the tech industry for a long time. I'll be totally honest. We all know this. And I've been there when the conversations occur. The algorithm, we don't know exactly what it's doing, but it's working and things are going up and to the right, and everybody's in the board meeting, woohoo, up and to the right, we're all going to be rich. And, oh, we're winning, we're succeeding. And it's kind of secondary to people to know what the fallout is, or, we'll see what the fallout is when the fallout happens, and we'll clean it up then. I mean, I do actually think Zuckerberg's belief is might is right. He has a Peter Thiel kind of approach to this, which is no regulation. How dare you try to stop people who are building stuff in the world? And it's in like that objectivist Ayn Randian, I'm going to build it. You can check me in the rearview mirror because I'm going. And if you want to try to stop us, feel free. But we're going to just keep building. And this sort of defiance you see in their response to all of this scrutiny. Klobuchar finished with a question about Facebook's election safeguards. These are critically important. Everybody around the world has been talking about this. It's not unique to the United States. Everybody in a democracy where there's elections is concerned about what happens when everybody's on a instant content sharing machine with algorithms that will surface the most crazy electric dynamic tweets. And sometimes those are misinformation. So according to this whistleblower, the safeguards were turned off after the election and then turned back on during the January 6th insurrection. I think this is going to be one of these political issues that we're not going to get consensus on. I think the Instagram with teen girls and the body dysmorphia issues are the more powerful ones in terms of actually creating change around how Facebook does what it does. But let's listen to Klobuchar one more time. I'll see you on the other side of this 1 minute and 2 second clip.
60 Minutes, you said that Facebook implemented safeguards to reduce misinformation ahead of the 2020 election, but turned off those safeguards right after the election. And you know that the insurrection occurred January 6th. Do you think that Facebook turned off the safeguards because they were costing the company money, because it was reducing profits?
Facebook has been emphasizing a false choice. They've said the safeguards that were in place before the election implicated free speech. The choices that were happening on the platform were really about how reactive and twitchy was the platform, right? Like how viral was the platform. And Facebook changed those safety defaults in the run-up to the election because they knew they were dangerous. And because they wanted that growth back, they wanted the acceleration of the platform back after the election, they returned to their original defaults. And the fact that they had to break the glass on January 6th and turn them back on, I think that's deeply problematic.
Agree. Thank you very much for your bravery in coming forward.
So this is interesting. I don't think we actually understand this breaking of the glass and this safeguard. We really need more information on it, because the safeguard could be a good thing. Before the election, they put on a safeguard, which would, it seems, because we don't exactly know. Again, this is where transparency would be very helpful. But it seems that this ability to throttle, it seems, I'm inferring something here, or I'm guessing, it seems like they are able to throttle the virality of the platform. In other words, you put out something that, is a Pizzagate or Russiagate or, pick the gate. It doesn't get amplified as fast. It doesn't go into everybody's feed as fast. This would then mean when you're sharing information, it gets shared amongst your, a smaller group of people, but it can't go viral. And if it can't go viral, well, that's going to decrease the time on site, because it might be that Pizzagate, that, or, the Clintons are aliens and all this wacky Alex Jones stuff on one side. And then on the other side with the Republicans that, Trump is a Manchurian candidate. Those things could just go right to the top and impact the election. So they could also be Gangnam Style. It could also be Squid Game. It could also be, I don't know, this celebrity is dating that celebrity. Stuff that drives people to the platforms, right? If you were to throttle these things, then the Kanye crazy tweet storms that we see every, 9 months, they wouldn't surface for you. You'd have to have search for Kanye to see those. Does that make sense? I think that's what this is doing. Now, when January 6th happened, what do they do? Oh my God. Now we're going to have other people start driving to the Capitol with their guns because they think we're in the middle of a revolution and that they could win it. Like, here's the thing. 1% or 2% of either party's base is mentally ill, right? What's the acute mental illness percentage of any population in the world? It's just the law of big numbers. My fan base, as modest as it is here, and brilliant and engaged and good looking, generally speaking, there's going to be some crazies in that. Any group's going to have some people who are deranged. The people who showed up on January 6th, some percentage of them were truly deranged and they brought guns. Now that stuff starts trending on Facebook or Twitter or whatever platform. What if some person suffering from mental illness who's a 2-hour drive away just says, this is a great opportunity for me to go out in a blaze of glory to, be famous forever in their deranged mind, and I'm going to go shoot up a building. This is what happens. You have to be careful with these tools, and now we know they have a circuit breaker. So the question is, why is that circuit breaker not built in? Like, if we know that these safeguards keep things from going viral and, keep things from getting out of hand, maybe that should be the default. And defaults matter in tech. We have a saying, defaults matter. How you set up the system by default is really what matters. So if you by default, ask people if they want to invite their friends and then upload their address book, you're going to grow really fast. If you say, by default, we're not going to upload your address book to use this service to find your friends, and you have to go, 3 clicks into the interface to do it, 1% of people are going to do it. And if you make it part of the standard onboarding, you might get 80, 90, or 99% of people to do it. Or you might get 100% of people to do it if you make it defaulted on and it's a requirement of the service. So maybe that's how we should be thinking about this. Senator Brian Schatz is a Democrat from Hawaii. He asked Haugen what changes she would immediately make if she was Facebook's CEO. Always a great framing of a question. If you were CEO, if you were God, if you were the president of the United States, if you were the supreme ruler of the universe, and you could wave a magic wand, what would you fix? It's always a good question. So let's hear Haugen's answer to that in 52 seconds. I'll see you on the other side.
I would immediately establish a policy of how to share information and research from inside the company with appropriate oversight bodies like Congress. I would give proposed legislation to Congress saying, here's what an effective oversight agency would look like. I would actively engage with academics to make sure that people who are confirming are Facebook's marketing message is true have the information they need to confirm these things. And I would immediately implement the, quote, soft interventions that were identified to protect the 2020 election. So that's things like requiring someone to click on a link before resharing it, because other companies like Twitter have found that significantly reduces misinformation. No one is censored by being forced to click on a link before resharing it.
Thank you. I want to pivot.
All right, so recapping some of the stuff we talked about earlier. Again, these seem like, if they're telling her if she was CEO, what would she do? She's not saying I would shut the company down. I wouldn't let teens use the product. She's not saying there should be an age limit. She didn't say there should be a separate service just for kids and you should have to sign up for it and pay for it. I mean, there are much, much greater interventions than the ones that she put forth. In fact, the ones she's putting forth are very soft. In fact, one category of them are soft interventions, but I would say overall, all of her interventions seem pretty easy and pretty soft. Okay. Schatz then finished up with a question about why Facebook is so focused on hooking teens and kids into the service. I think it's pretty obvious why you want to get young people into your service is because there's competing products like TikTok and Snapchat. And, you know, if you get them young, you keep them for later. So here is Haugen's 40-second answer.
Facebook understands that if they want to continue to grow, they have to find new users. They have to make sure that the next generation is just as engaged with Instagram as the current one. And the way they'll do that is by making sure that children establish habits before they have good self-regulation.
By hooking kids.
By hooking kids. I would like to emphasize one of the documents that we sent in on problematic use examined the rates of problematic use by age, and that peaked with 14-year-olds. It's just like cigarettes. Teenagers don't have good self-regulation. They say explicitly, I feel bad when I use Instagram, and yet I can't stop. We need to protect the kids.
Yeah, and again, this is the most powerful argument. We all know kids don't self-regulate. I mean, we were all kids at some point. Kids do stupid stuff. There's a speed limit. Kids will exceed it. There's a rule. They're going to break it. There's a boundary. They're going to push it. Their frontal lobes are not yet fully developed. That still happens into their early 20s, if you look at the research. So having kids make any kind of a critical decision, you want that to happen when they're 21, when their frontal lobes and they start thinking about long-term ramifications of their behavior. This is why binge drinking is so dangerous on college campuses, because if you're not a fully developed individual and know the ramifications, you might decide to chug an amount of alcohol that could give you alcohol poisoning, right? This is why Four Loko and some of these brands, we looked at them and said, hey, we need to regulate these or stop them, because giving kids an insane amount of caffeine and insane amount of alcohol in one can, that could be problematic. If it's a glass of wine, you'll probably puke from drinking too much wine before you have enough alcohol in your system to really do damage. But kids were literally getting caffeine poisoning and alcohol poisoning from some of those crazy drinks. And as a society and as entrepreneurs, I think that's a pretty good analogy for social media. It's kind of like Four Loko, is a kid should they be drinking alcohol at that young age? No. Should they be drinking copious amounts of caffeine? No. Should you put both together and put a funky logo on it and make it fun? Should kids be using vape pens? No. Should you be marketing it to kids with pina colada flavors? No. It's like there is a group of entrepreneurs who will just say, you know what? If there's another use for it and kids happen to get it, well, so be it. We can't not let adults have this pina colada flavor. It's like, well, you could put it in a black box with just and put it behind the counter, pina colada flavor, be regulated a little bit more, right? It'd be better for kids. So let's do another 75-second clip here of Haugen answering a question from South Dakota Senator John Thune. Is that how you pronounce his name, John Thune?
Yes.
Okay, about Facebook's engagement-based ranking. And what I love about this moment in time is that we're seeing a more sophisticated discussion as a society about social media. We were having this discussion 5 years ago, 10 years ago on this very podcast about is this good or bad for society and the algorithms. Well, guess what? The politicians might be slow. The research might be slow, but it's caught up now. And we're having a pretty granular discussion here, aren't we? 75-second clip, see on the side.
Strongly believe, I've spent most of my career working on systems like engagement-based ranking. When I come to you and say these things, I'm basically damning 10 years of my own work, right? Engagement-based ranking, Facebook says we can do it safely because we have AI. The artificial intelligence will find the bad content that we know our engagement-based ranking is promoting. They've written blog posts on how they know engagement-based ranking is dangerous, but the AI will save us. Facebook's own research says they cannot adequately identify dangerous content. And as a result, those dangerous algorithms that they admit are picking up the extreme sentiments, the division, they can't protect us from the harms that they know exist in their own system. And so I don't think it's just a question of saying, should people have the option of choosing to not be manipulated by their algorithms? I think if we had appropriate oversight, or if we reformed 230 to make Facebook responsible for the consequences of their intentional ranking decisions, I think they would get rid of engagement-based ranking, because it is causing teenagers to be exposed to more anorexia content. It is pulling families apart. And in places like Ethiopia, it's literally fanning ethnic violence.
All right, so this is very simple to understand. I think everybody's getting a great education. We all know this. Engagement-based ranking. The more clicks, the more comments, the more shares with comments, the more replies or threads that emerge from a piece of content. Well, that means share it more, surface it more, get more engagement on your platform. And what she's saying, very clear, and I think it's easy for anybody who's listening to this show to understand, is, hey, you don't know if the reason that is doing so well is because it's racist, or it's hate speech, or it's misinformation, or it's political lies. Lies will have a higher engagement-based ranking than truths. Things that are logical and simple are not worth sharing, right? Like if I tell you, like, if the sun rises, and the sun sets, and, there's the population is X, and, the weather is Y, is there any reason to share that? No, it's just a fact. It's just, very simple, truths don't get shared like that. For those of you who don't know what Section 230 is, I'll just read to you what it says. No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. It's a fancy way of saying if you run an online service, you're not responsible. If you run an open platform, you're not responsible for what people say on it. They're responsible, right? And this makes complete logical sense. Section 230 is, I think, pretty solid in terms of as a rule, because we do not make Verizon or paper companies responsible for what people write on paper or what Verizon users say over the phone. Now, there are some differences between what Verizon is doing and what paper and journals in the world do. They don't have an algorithm surfacing things and putting on the top. So if a paper company said, we're going to watch all million letters written, and we're going to take the one that's got the highest engagement ranking, and we're going to send it to everybody in the world, well, that would be different. So when you have an algorithm, then I think Section 230 needs to be revisited. And you need to say, listen, if you're going to rank things, if you're going to promote things, and you're going to have your own algorithm, then you're going to need to rethink it. And a possible solution there would be what Jack said about Twitter, which is maybe people will bring their own algorithm, and we'll go back to reverse chronological order. Reverse chronological order just meant whoever you follow, we give you their content in reverse chronological order. The newest stuff is up top, the oldest stuff is below it. And you can, in fact, set your Twitter to that. And I think there's somewhere deep in the Facebook interface the ability to just say, show me everything, and show it in reverse chronological order. That's how these systems worked originally. And then they found out when you did an algorithmic based surfacing of interesting things, people came back more. So if you had 100 posts in your feed, and post number 98 was, a wedding, an engagement notification, or a bar mitzvah, or a sweet 16, or a baby announcement, or a graduation announcement, man, those things would go viral. Everybody would place comments. Oh, congratulations on your engagement. Oh my God, what a beautiful baby. So that should go up top, right? As opposed to the first 10 posts that you looked at chronologically might not be that interesting, but that 98th one was. That was the virtuous version of this. That's long gone. So if we go back and, we look historically back on episode 1132, I had the Acquired FM boys on, and we talked about the Section 230 hearings. During those, Jack Dorsey proposed this exact solution. So let's just go back to October of 2020, and Jack with a strong beard game talking about Section 230 and BYOA, bring your own algorithm, 33 seconds. See you on the side.
much of the content people see today is determined by algorithms, with very little visibility into how they choose what they show. We took a first step in making this more transparent by building a button to turn off our home timeline algorithms. It's a good start, but we're inspired by the market approach suggested by Dr. Stephen Wolfram before this committee in June 2019. Enabling people to choose algorithms created by third parties to rank and filter the content is an incredibly energizing idea that's in reach.
All right, so I think that's just a great summary of sort of algorithms and all the different approaches to it in 230. We'll get into in a moment how Facebook's responded to all of her thoughts. And before we do, I got a comment here from the Noti Gang, the people who watch me tape the podcast live at youtube.com/thisweekend. And somebody with the handle Tech says, Cal, you should talk about the individuals using these platforms to at least take some responsibility. Apologies if you previously mentioned this. No, I think it's a very valid point. If you're an adult and you decide you want to smoke cigarettes or, eat fried chicken or pints of ice cream, like you have some agency over your life, fine. You should be allowed to do it. We're not going to stop you. But if you're going to, eat pints of Haagen-Dazs, it should say on the back how many calories and fat it has. Shouldn't it say that? And if you're going to smoke cigarettes, maybe there should be a warning on it. And I think that this has been very helpful. I don't know anybody who is upset when they go to a city where they post the calorie count on the menu. I know at the beginning people were like, oh, this takes, this doesn't feel right to me. It feels weird to see the calorie count. You know what? The calorie count may help me lose weight because I didn't know that goddamn maple frosted scone. I thought I was making an intelligent choice, right? It's a scone. It sounds like it's got some good grains in it. There's a little maple frosting on it, but that can't be so bad. And I'll have a mocha. Sometimes I'll treat myself or, maybe I'll have a latte. Oh, Jesus Christ. If I was drinking a black coffee and a croissant with 250 calories versus the 500 calorie, 600 calorie maple scone and the 800 calorie latte, I was eating 1,200 calories every morning for breakfast. No wonder I got fat. I then started drinking black coffee and a croissant like a French person. I started losing weight. I could never have done that. I would have never looked at the goddamn calorie count, but I saw the calorie count there and I said, okay, 5 calories versus 300 calories from my beverage. I'm going with the 5 calorie. I'll learn to like black coffee. Oh, 250 for a croissant? I like croissants. I didn't know a croissant was less than a scone. Makes sense though. The scone's covered in sugar and the scone's got all those dense grains in it. It was obvious for me after I saw that. So I think that's the analogy here. Facebook comms director Andy Stone decided to get into it. And, watching the Facebook people do this is just gross. I think this is the moment for you to be humble, to be collaborative with society, given the track record of Facebook. Now, Facebook has consistently done horrible things with our privacy and their product decisions. And this absolutely terrible executive, Andy Stone, decides that instead of having a really intelligent, humble discussion about the actual issues, he decides he's going to attack the messenger. This is the stupidest approach you could take. If this person is in comms, if Andy Stone has got a comms degree, this is the worst possible person you could ever hire to do comms because this is textbook bad communications. Look at this tweet. I'm going to read it to you. Just pointing out, he starts with just pointing out. You ever have a friend say that to you? Just one thing. Oh, can I just point out? That is such a weaselly way to start a tweet, right? Just pointing out the fact that Frances Haugen did not work on child safety or Instagram or research these issues and has no direct knowledge of the topic from her work at Facebook. Just pointing out. That's like when somebody says to you, don't take this the wrong way. you know what's coming, right? Something you're going to take the wrong way. Something that's going to be incredibly hurtful. What a moron. Seriously, like, Andy, you are in the wrong line of work. And man, he got ratioed 25-1 replies to quote tweets to likes. It is just bonkers. Yikes. I don't know if that's a ratio that I've rarely hit. Personally attacking Haugen is not the right communication approach here. He's not talking about what she said. He is just attacking her character. That's not what we want to see out of Facebook right now. So I replied with simply, how much money have you made from your stock and cash comp at Facebook to date? Because that's really what's driving these comms people. You know, somebody was telling me I gave a hard time to the other Brit who's defending them. If you're a comms person, the ability to make $10 million does not come along, period. Like, there's no PR people who get to secure a bag, 5, 10, 25 million bucks. These cats, they've secured the bag. The reason they're behaving like this, the reason they're attacking the messenger, the reason why they have no credibility is because they secured the bag. It's about money. I mean, I hate to tell you exactly what you think is correct. I'm guessing Andy Stone's made 10 million bucks. I don't know. I'm guessing who's the other guy who I laid into yesterday?
Nick Clegg.
Yeah, Charles's boy.
Yeah, Nick Clegg.
I hate him.
I'm going to say Nick Clegg took down. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Clegg took down 25 to 100 million bucks in stock in a decade, if he's been there for a decade. You know, like a couple $1 million a year, stock doubles or triples. It's just they're sellouts. That's it. That's all you need to know. They sold their soul to secure the bag. Well played. If you're a PR person, you know, the idea that you could even make $1 million a year is crazy. It's kind of like when a journalist or a PR person goes to work for some bad actor. They're just going to secure the bag. They're taking their skills to a place where they can actually get paid the largest amount of money. It's kind of like being, it's not dissimilar to being a lobbyist, right? If you wanted to be a tobacco lobbyist, I think that's how society will look at Nick Clegg and Andy Stone. They're going to look at them as like tobacco lobbyists or tobacco PR people, like just the worst possible humans you can imagine. Like, they're defending kids having body dysmorphia and anxiety using these platforms. Like, just talk about the issues. Bob Pickard, a PR industry veteran with a blue check mark, also replied to Steve with the following tweet. The backlash to this tweet will prove useless in the new PR case study of how not
useful.
The backlash to this tweet will prove useful in the new PR case study on how not to do modern crisis comms. These lower end tactics from the political realm aren't effective here. From the slick Nick Clegg pre-buttal on reliable sources to this sort of ad hominem sliming. Hashtag PR ethics. Hashtag PR ethics, kind of an oxymoron, huh? But I think Bob is saying exactly what I'm saying. Is this is not what we're looking for here, dummies. Like, really dumb. Like, and this is the problem. When you're inside of the bubble and you're in this wartime mentality, you know, I think Zuckerberg learned a lot from Peter Thiel, learned a lot from Trump, learned a lot from this sort of right-wing, never apologize, go on the offensive. And, you know, it's worked to get them to this point. But this is the point where this is not going to work. Why? Kids harming themselves. Nobody wants to see kids harming themselves. Once you get to kids harming themselves, you've lost. You must be humble. You must be contrite. You must be collaborative. This tactic works when you're talking about banning Trump or not banning Trump and political issues. Fine, sure. But as Bob Pickard correctly points out, going on the offensive against somebody who's making, you know, very reasonable recommendations. Like, if her recommendations were not reasonable, then you could say, okay, this person's hysterical and they want to shut down Facebook and break it up and they got an axe to grind. She's kind of got less of an axe to grind than I do, or many people do with Facebook. You know, I think I've got a stronger response to Facebook's behavior over the decades. Zuckerberg decided he would respond. He was busy sailing, I think, when Facebook was down on his sailboat, which I think is called Shenanigans, because when I saw the clip, it said Shenanigans on the mast. So That was, I thought, paradoxical and notable. Zuckerberg sent an internal memo to the entire company and then shared it. Some of the quotes, I'm sure many of you have found the recent coverage hard to read because it just doesn't reflect the company we know. Okay, circling the wagons, get everybody internally. Hey, we're all on the same team. That's what that statement is. Hey, this is not who we are. This isn't us. Kind of is, you guys. Let's be honest. You guys have always said move fast and break things. This is who you are. You're moving fast, you're breaking things. Just own it. Next quote. I think most of us just don't recognize this false picture of the company that is being painted. Again, he's trying to use a very persuasive technique here, like, this isn't who we are, right? The we here, this is not how we look at this. At the heart of these accusations is the idea that we prioritize profit over safety and well-being, and that's just not true. Kind of is. If you're building the algorithm and you're just sending people down rabbit holes, that is the case. The argument that we deliberately push content that makes people angry for profit is deeply illogical. We make money from ads, and advertisers constantly tell us they don't want their ads next to harmful or angry content. Yeah, now this is an example of mixing lies and truth to try to convince people of stuff. Yes, it is true. Advertisers do not want to be, some advertisers, brand advertisers, a subsection of advertisers do not want to be next to political content, and they wouldn't buy, as an example, they wouldn't buy Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson, right? They just wouldn't want to be on either side of that. There are many advertisers who don't care. They're CPG based. They just want to move product. They actually don't care. And if they can get angry content or racy content or controversial content at a lower price and bigger results, they'll go for it. If you get those people selling gold coins, guns, rations to put in your, end of days bunker, they're more than happy to sponsor Ben Shapiro or, Russell Brand, either side of the aisle. They'll get in there and pick either side and do it. So he's not telling the truth here. He's telling a truth and leaving out the overall big picture. People do want to be where the eyeballs are, period. So the truth of this is, if you get more eyeballs on Facebook, yes, certain advertisers like Coca-Cola or Disney might not want to be next to political speech. They don't want to touch that. The NBA, they just want to appeal to everybody and keep it very milquetoast. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be drawn to the platform overall. And so this is basically the devil mixing lies with truth. I'm not saying Zuckerberg's a devil, but this is the devil's technique of communication. Mix lies and truth to try to make your point. And once you deconstruct it, it's obvious what he's doing there. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the kinds of experiences I want my kids and others to have online. And it's very important to me that everything we build is safe and good for kids. Okay, he's pulling his own kids card. Great. It's a classic way to do it. Like, I would never want to hurt children. Meanwhile, your PR people are attacking the messenger and not talking about the real issue. We've also worked on bringing this kind of age-appropriate experience with parental controls for Instagram too, but given all the questions about whether this would actually be better for kids, we paused that project, take more time to engage with experts and make sure anything we do would be helpful. So what he's saying is, we got caught, we got called out for doing Instagram Kids, and we pumped the brakes. So you can be sure that they would have gone full blast ahead with Instagram Kids if they hadn't been questioned. So again, I find that a little bit of a weak defense. Like many of you, I found it difficult to read the mischaracterization of the research on how Instagram affects young people, yada, yada, yada. And it's disheartening to see that our work is taken out of context and used to construct a false narrative that we don't care. Frustrating to see the good work we do mischaracterized, especially for those of you who are making important contributions to safety, integrity, and research. I'm proud of everything we do to keep building the best social products in the world and grateful to all of you. So what he's trying to do with this whole word salad here is to keep people from resigning. I think that's the big fear he has, is that he's not going to be able to keep great people at Facebook. I think it's becoming untenable to work at Facebook. If you're in Atherton or Palo Alto, like every conversation seems to be about Facebook, and everybody in Palo Alto and Atherton either has made money from Facebook or sold a company to Facebook. So the Facebook money is just sloshing around this town, and it's just very hard for people. It's so myopic here. Like, it's just this like obsession of talking about Facebook is it good or bad for society, while it's just the money is just sloshing all over the place from it. I don't think any of this is a mischaracterization. And, as Nick Clegg is saying, and they're circling the wagons. We should wrap this up at this point. I think we've been talking about it for an hour on one. I'll just say, I think that this is an existential moment for Facebook. We knew it would come eventually. And I would think we'll see people resigning from Facebook would be probably the biggest impact this will have. I think regulation is going to be very hard. I think they'll self-regulate. That's my guess. And self-regulation will, it could be headwinds, just like the Apple, anonymizing people's data and not letting them track people as granularly for advertising from Facebook. I think that these things are all just becoming headwinds, and the headwinds might be 1-2% against Facebook, and they might be growing 10 or 20%. So does it mean the company's going to stop growing? I don't think for a while, but I do think that it's going to be tough for people to want to go work there. I think it's going to be tough for people to see it as the stock you want to own. But many people bought the tobacco stocks even after a lot of those settlements because they just threw off a lot of cash. So Facebook's not going anywhere, but this is going to be something that people will talk about for the next couple of years. And the talent drain at Facebook is I think the number one existential problem. If you're at Facebook, it does not feel good to go to work. I know Facebook employees. I know former Facebook employees. I hear the buzz around the town. You tell somebody you went to work for Facebook, and people are just like, I don't want to say you're a pariah if you work at Facebook, but basically the entire conversation leads to people goofing on or upset at you, and it just becomes like it's literally like working for a tobacco company. Actually, it's literally like working at a tobacco company. People are like, I could be friends with you, but I kind of don't want to talk to you about your work because I don't agree with what you're doing in the world. And that, for people who have made their money already or super talented people have choices of where to work, it's just not a world positive place to go to work. So I think the brain drain is going to be the biggest punishment for all this stuff. And what would be nice as an outcome would be to have all of this research out there and to maybe rethink the algorithm and how quickly that circuit breaker should probably become the standard. If the circuit breaker was the standard, I think we'd all feel a lot better about this. Okay. We'll talk about this a lot more, but let's do another story.
All right, Ginkgo.
That was a long one. Okay, give me 1 second.
What's up, people? Get those likes up. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. We definitely appreciate it.
Also, if you are a Chicago-based founder, you guys have a meetup coming up. It is going to be happening on October 30th. So you guys can check out the Slack.
Rachel, you're super low.
Oh,
And we
man.
can't see you.
1 sec, guys.
All right, Noti fans, did you like that? How's my Noti gang going? Do we have any thumbs up on the YouTube video? Should take a couple questions at the end. I don't know.
88 thumbs up.
88 thumbs up. There you go. Huh? Pretty good. Let's get to 100.
But we're definitely low. I mean, in terms of the people concurrently watching, we're at 260. So there's a lot of people who haven't done it. It's got to be above 125 then. Everybody take a moment. This YouTube.com/thisweekend. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell next to it so you're part of the notification gang. Every day I give the Noti gang the praise they deserve and read out their names. And once in a while, let's face it, I'm doing okay. And so I love my Noti gang. It's kind of the best part of my day is my producers and my Noti gang. And so I'm shipping it. I gave somebody some Peking duck that I loved. And then today somebody won an Ember
100
mug.
likes.
100 likes. There it goes. Perfect. So give the thumbs up, because what happens is, speaking of the algorithm, if you thumbs up, it lets YouTube know that this is not garbage content. Like, I'm not talking about some stupid stuff. And then it'll show up on other people's feeds if they happen to be on YouTube. But if you're not on YouTube and you want to know the show is live, how do you do it? You join the Noti gang and you click the bell. Okay, let's do Ginkgo Bioworks. This is a good story. And a lot of people have been asking about it.
Here we go. 3, 2. Okay, Scorpion Capital. It's a short seller. Scorpion Capital, a short seller, released a short report on Ginkgo Bioworks. And the stock is down around 20% so far today. Remember, we had Jason Kelly from Ginkgo Bioworks on episode 1239 of this very podcast. So that was this year. They are a synthetic biology company that claimed to have an interesting business model. They would develop products on a service-based basis. In other words, instead of them making the products, they would work with other companies, and they would essentially be the Amazon Web Services of synthetic biology, as opposed to other companies that were going to build the products themselves. We'll get into that in a minute. And Jason was well-spoken on the program. I did get a couple of DMs that, hey, this company's a little shaky. Maybe they used other choice language. So I always take the approach here of let the founder speak on our podcast and let them explain their business model. And here we go. Here's Ginkgo CEO describing their business model in this 38-second clip. Let's talk about it on the other side.
The way Ginkgo's business works is we're like cell programmers for hire.
Got it.
Okay, right? So I'm sitting in front of like a 200,000 square foot compiler and debugger for genetic code here in Boston. It's like robotic automation doing what I did back in grad school. And then we use that machine to basically program a cell to meet a customer spec. And then we give it to them and we make money like kind of like Apple would make money in the App Store, right? Like we get like a royalty or equity in their company or some reach into the value of the app.
That's a fascinating business model. So what's an example of a company that sends you on a mission like this?
All right, so I'll give you what I like. So there's a company called Kronos up in Canada. It's a Canadian cannabis company. All right, Altria owns like half of this company.
Okay, so what you see there is he explains their business model, and I was like, well, that's fascinating. It's kind of like an incubator plus a service business. So this would be as if Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or Azure from Microsoft said, hey, let's have you come in and we will, you pay us to do your synthetic biology research, but we get some upside. It's a pretty good business model, right? It's like an incubator plus service revenue. Kind of interesting. It would be like a development shop building your app and investing in your company. So we researched Kronos, and it seems like they don't share similar investors in Ginkgo. And if you look at Ginkgo, and we'll get to that in a minute, why that's important. Ginkgo build themselves as kind of an app store or AWS for synthetic biology. This would be a platform that other people could build on top of, right? So they did a SPAC back in May at a $15 billion valuation. And we officially started tracking the DNA stock. So if you do a search for $DNA on Twitter, or you just search for that, this SPAC was led by former head of MGM, Harry Sloan. I mean, that's a little bit of a mini red flag. I don't know what MGM has to do with DNA and synthetic biology. So we had a similar collapse for another synthetic biology company that we also had on the podcast on episode 1231. I had been hearing about synthetic biology from my bestie, David Friedberg, on All In. I said, okay, I said to my producers, what are the synthetic biology companies? Let's get JCal and the audience up to speed on them. Let's have them on and let's let them talk. Well, that company, Zymergen, announced that they were way off their revenue predictions. They'd make no revenue in 2022, and they removed their CEO, Josh Hoffman, who was on the program. All right, so let's get back to Ginkgo. This morning, which is Wednesday, October 6, 2021, short seller Scorpion Capital released a report on Ginkgo's business model, calling it and then I'm going to put this in quotes, a colossal scam. Now, Scorpion is an activist short seller, just like Hindenburg Research, whose reports we discussed on Nicola also on the program, also, or I should say, not also, they turned out to be really, really, it seems like one of the biggest frauds we're going to see in a long time in Silicon Valley. Scorpion released their first short seller. And isn't it interesting, Scorpion, Hindenburg? It seems like all these short sellers have to name themselves some really scary, deadly name. Scorpion and Hindenburg. Wow. Very evocative. Good persuasive names, I would say.
Good branding.
Good branding. Really strong brands. Like you think about Hindenburg, you think about Scorpion. You don't want to be involved and you don't want to touch either one of those. So in April, they released a report on QuantumScape, the EV battery startup that had lost 85% of its value since peaking at $130 a share in December of 2020. So activist investors take a large portion. Activist investors, if you don't know, take a large position. Then they disclose their rationale to the public in a PR move. The biggest examples would be Bill Ackman's Pershing Square and Paul Singer's Elliott Management. I think Bill Ackman was the one who did Herbalife. That kind of blew up in his face. He wasn't able to convince the world that that was an MLM scam, which was his position. So you can read the following at Scorpion Capital's Twitter feed, which is Scorpion Fund, one word. And here's the 6-tweet thread they released this morning. Number 1, we are short DNA. Ginkgo Bioworks is a colossal scam. Frankenstein mashup of the worst frauds of the last 20 years. At $23 billion market cap, it is rare to see a related party scheme on Ginkgo scale in the U.S. markets. It is quite simply the U.S. version of the China hustle, in quotes. Number 2, in the tweet storm. And this is a really important one. Ginkgo's business model, which I had talked about in that clip, is based on a dubious shell game. Most of its Foundry revenue, I called it the Foundry an accelerator, and observed 72% in 2020, and almost 100% of its deferred revenue are derived from related party, and in quotes, customers. Investments into these entities by Ginkgo and its investors are round-tripped back. And that is the key word in the sentence, round-tripped back. What is round-tripping? Well, let me give you a little history lesson. AOL, America Online, had controlled much of the internet in the early days. And you're like, how did AOL control the internet? Well, there were 30 million people paying for AOL at the time. And that was how people figured out how to pick a website. People didn't have just like a DSL connection largely then. They would dial up into AOL, and then AOL would present them like, here's the choices of what's on the web. That's why they bought Netscape. And what they did was they did what were called portal deals. These portal deals would cost $50 million, $100 million, a lot of money at the time. In today's money, they would be $500 million deals, let's say, maybe even billion. So they would sell a company, I think it was like CD Now or Music something, the music category. They would sell somebody the auto category. So there would be somebody who was trying to make the Yahoo of autos or the Yahoo of music or CDs or movies. And they would say, okay, we would like you to pay us $50 million. They might invest in the company at the same time, $50 million. So they'd say, okay, we'll invest $50 million into your startup. So when you take it public, we get the upside, because IPOs were going crazy in the dot-com days. This was the accusation. Then the sales department would say, okay, give us $50 million in advertising. And it was like, they wouldn't have the $50 million if you hadn't invested the $50 million. And this is the shell game, right, that they're talking about here. And round tripping means the money takes a round trip. I give you the money, you give it back. So let's just create a scenario here. You work, your startup is part of, an accelerator. A big accelerator, and it's a SaaS business. And you say, I need 10 people to buy my software. And you email that social network for that particular piece of SaaS software, and 10 people buy it, but you charge them a small amount of money and maybe you buy their software. And now you got 10 paying customers and you go to VCs and you raise money. Well, this is what one person accused Y Combinator of doing in the early days. And I don't know that that's true. I don't have no evidence of it. And it wouldn't be Y Combinator doing it. It would be the companies within Y Combinator. So this was part of the playbook was, hey, let me get 10 of my friends to use my software. It wasn't limited to, I think, Y Combinator companies. If I was at Techstars or 500 startups, you might do the same thing. We're not big enough at launch to have it happen. We have 160 startups. But if you had a couple of thousand startups, you could go to the mailing and say, hey, can people start using my software? Now you go and say, we have 12 customers. The value of those contracts is X. That's why when we do our diligence, we say, can you give us your first 10 customers? How did you acquire them? How much are they paying? And then how many times did they log into the software this month? Right? That's real diligence, right? Did they actually use the product? How did you meet them? And we will discount the first 5 or 6 people typically because it's the company where the founder worked previously. It's their cousin who did them a favor and trialed the software, and it's 3 people from their accelerator class who used it, right? So there are all kinds of shenanigans that can happen, and I think the framing of this is the problem. If you call people customers, you think they're paying customers and you earned them, you won your customers. In this case, did they win the customers? Does not feel like it, does it? Doesn't feel like these were hard-fought customers. This feels like, okay, maybe they are joint ventures. If they said Ginkgo is running an accelerator of joint ventures, we invest in companies, those companies pay us for services, we're all in it together. Yeah, sure, you could look at it and say it's conflicted, but it would all be above board, and I'm sure that will be Ginkgo's explanation of this. And Scorpion is looking at it and saying it feels differently. And that's why I asked to pull the clip from our podcast, because I looked at it and said, that's a good business model. But it was presented to me as, one thing, and we'll see. Again, these are all accusations. I would encourage people to wait and see what the response is in all these cases, because Scorpion now has a position that they want this stock to go down. We saw the same thing with Tesla, right? They said Elon would never deliver the cars, and then he started delivering hundreds of thousands of them. And anybody who rode in them said this is the greatest car ever made. And all of the people who review cars said this is the greatest car made in the history of automotive companies. Like, this was not small praise. And there objectively were things like the NTSB or the safety rating saying this thing broke the rating scale. Like this, there's never been a safer car than the Model X. So the evidence started to come up that like maybe they were spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I would take Scorpion's claims and I would say, okay, these are claims. Let's hear the response from Ginkgo, and then let's look at what the reality is. And the reality, of course, is going to be between those two things. I think Herbalife was another example of this. One person's multi-level marketing scheme and could be another person's entrepreneurial eBay or, Airbnb, right? Like it feels like, all of these services that allow people to make money and make them into little entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs. Yeah, they could be framed as an MLM, or they could seem shady, and they might be. And then in other cases, they could be world changing and totally on the up and up, like Airbnb or Etsy or eBay. So let's read the third tweet here from Scorpion Capital. We believe that Ginkgo is concealing the true extent of its dependence on related party revenue, and that it is even greater than it reports. We have uncovered a smoking gun that indicates that essentially all of its foundry revenue is derived from related parties. The allegation Scorpion is basically making here is that they manufactured their revenue. And so if you manufacture your revenue, you shape the revenue like this, and you call them customers and they're really joint ventures, that seems to be not kosher in my mind. But again, let's wait till we hear the response. These are certainly blockbuster allegations. The fourth tweet, the actual truth is far more nefarious than related parties and suggests that it is a hoax for the ages. Whoa, strong words. Based on interviews with its customers, we believe that at least half of Ginkgo's reported foundry revenue is phantom. That is non-cash and pure accounting hocus pocus. Okay. Phantom revenue. That is crazy. So that would be if the round tripping was occurring and the cash didn't move from one bank account to the other, but it just happened on paper where it said like, okay, we're going to invest 10 million in your company and you're going to agree to give us 5 million, but we're actually not going to run that money back and forth and pay taxes on them and, have them, be actually certified by accountants. Maybe that's what they're referring to here. We don't know because they're using very strange words that are not, that are open to interpretation. Hoax for the ages, that the revenue is phantom. These are not actual words, pure accounting hocus pocus. These are ad hominem, not precise accounting concepts yet. So we'll see when they release all this research. We spoke with several former employees. This is where it gets interesting, who indicated that they had been terminated for refusing to play along with the scheme and who stated they knew of others pushed out for similar reasons. And I think when I spoke to Hindenburg, they alluded to the fact that these kind of companies that are activists and take short positions will very often just talk to former employees and get an idea that some company is a scam or is on shaky ground and they'll spill the beans. I don't know if they compensate those whistleblowers. They're kind of like whistleblowers in a way, right? They're not coming out, but they're giving information to these activists. So I don't know the legality of all this. I'm supposing those former employees did sign NDAs, and if this were to become actionable, they would be revealed. So I'm not sure how that actually works. I'm interested if they have a financial interest, like does Scorpion or Hindenburg say to the people who leak this information, we'll give you part of our gains if you give us this information, and would that be legal or not? That's just a hypothesis there. I wonder what the motivation is of people who leave for talking to activist investors. Like, do they have an axe to grind? In the last 2 months, timed with its SPAC listing, Ginkgo, this is a 6th tweet, has announced a flurry of new R&D partners, a dog whistle that the scam is about to hit overdrive. We believe these partners are undisclosed related parties. We present several smoking guns. So what's the real issue here? The scale is the issue. If this was a $1 billion private company, I don't think we're having this conversation. They would be saying, okay, you're trying to jumpstart the industry. When Google came out with Google Glasses, they gave $100 million to Mark Andreessen and I think Kleiner Perkins and some other folks, and they did a fund to invest and jumpstart their ecosystem. TikTok paid creators to make content. YouTube had the creators program. They built studios for them to use to make better videos. They gave them money in advance. Like injecting money into an ecosystem to grow it is completely valid, right? But if you're a public company and it is of a big scale here, and maybe like they said they had 77 million in revenue in 2020, 10 times that would be $770 million. And, 100 times that would be $7.7 billion. And they're at $15 billion. So talking about 200 times their revenue, top line is their valuation. The scale of their valuation, combined with being a publicly traded company, combined with going public in a nascent state of the business, i.e. what SPACs in many cases are doing, that is the problem here. If it was a private company, if civilians weren't investing, if you couldn't bet against the stock, then there would be no issue here. But you can bet against the stock. This is why people didn't want to go public to begin with. This is why stay private longer existed as a concept. Because if you go out too early, let's say everything Ginkgo is doing is on the up and up, and if it was a $1 billion private company, all these sophisticated investors who were buying it could have said, you know what? We buy in. Go ahead, juice the market. Let's get the market going. Yeah, invest $10 million of our money in 20 different companies that are doing completely speculative stuff. We know that 18 of them are going to zero, but 2 could become, our blue chip customers who prove out the model, and then we'll go public. If it was done that way, this would seem completely on the up and up, and it probably would be no issue. But that's the issue here, is the scale of these companies and the fact that civilians, the public, you and I, can go buy them. Hocus pocus revenue, really interesting way to say it. According to Scorpion, a senior Genomatica employee. According to Scorpion, a senior Genomatica employee told them that they never paid Ginkgo cash for R&D services, and they just used R&D credits, which were provided from large investments from Viking Capital, who is also a large investor in Ginkgo. That is the smoking gun here. So Viking Capital is an investor in Ginkgo. They make billions, let's say. We don't know how much of, I don't think we know how much of Ginkgo Viking owns. That would be good to know.
Sorry, Viking Global, not Viking Capital.
Viking Global. If Viking Global made $1 billion from there, I'm just making a number up here, but let's say Viking Global made $1 billion in profit from their Ginkgo position. And then they said, you know what? We think we can make 10 billion. We want it to 10x from here. Let's invest hundreds of millions of dollars in our profits. We'll bank, we'll bank 750, but we'll take 250 and we'll invest in a company, Genomatica and 10 other ones like it, so that they can then go use Ginkgo services and we'll jumpstart an entire ecosystem. Well, that would be fine if these were private companies and there were no civilians buying the stock, and if it was presented as such and it was super clear. I guess the issue is going to come down to here is, are you counting R&D credits, and are you propping up the stock price of one company by investing in others? And then was it done transparently? That's all going to be the issue here. If you were an investor in Airbnb and you decided to invest in 10 property management companies, let's take that as an example. So let's say Airbnb is worth $1 billion and they're doing $50 million in revenue, and you're a rich venture capitalist who owns 10% of that company. You have a $100 million position. You say, you know what? I'm going to invest in, I don't know, 10 property management companies. I'm going to give them $5 million each. Half of my returns, or on paper returns from this incredible Airbnb investment, and they're going to buy with that $5 million, 10 apartments in these 10 different cities, and I'm going to make a profit off those, and it will also be good for Airbnb. Well, okay, you're not propping it up because it's a real business. People are renting those apartments. You're just making a savvy bet based on insider information that you have that the model works, but it's also helping your other investment. Well, that would just be investing like in a movement. You're investing all across the board, which is kind of what we do here in Silicon Valley. If you believe in cloud computing and you have an investment in Slack or Yammer before that, and you see other opportunities, Zoom is similar to Slack, and this other Notion kind of works well with Slack. You're just investing in a theme, right? So the question here is Viking Global investing in a theme here, or are they propping up the company as Scorpion is kind of alleging they are doing? So it's a very interesting case. We'll watch it. And synthetic biology might be such an emerging technology that these companies shouldn't go public. And this is the sort of Achilles heel, I think, of the entire movement of SPACs, which is companies that are nascent need time to figure out their business model, not be under scrutiny. And, I'm not saying that they're cutting corners, but they're doing things you do when you're trying to manifest a market. So there you have it, folks. Maybe this company shouldn't have gone public. Okay, let's do a quick introduction for today's show, and then I will take, I think, 4 questions if we're at 100. So 3, 2. Okay, everybody, we have an amazing show for you today. It's all news, and man, 2 huge news stories today. First, I break down all the highlights from the Facebook whistleblowers hearing. You're going to hear the key quotes, my response to them, and we're going to get into Zuckerberg's kind of smarmy response as well, and the dirty PR tactics from Facebook's PR team that I'm not a fan of. And then we're going to cover Scorpion Capital's short seller report on Ginkgo Bioworks, who were recently on the podcast on episode 1239. These are explosive allegations. We don't know if they're true, but they involve allegations of round tripping, which is something AOL was accused of 20 years ago. And I remember that from my youth. And this is going to be an important discussion about should these companies even be private, or should these companies even be public or not. Stick with us. It's a great episode.
I was getting some freezing there. Was anyone else experiencing freezing?
I was. I saw Jason freeze. Yeah.
Could we
3, 2. Okay, everybody, we've got an amazing show for you today. It's a big news day, and we are, of course, going to get into the Facebook whistleblower hearing, Facebook's PR team's dirty tactic response, and Zuckerberg's response to all of this brouhaha and the Donnybrook that has ensued. I'm going to opine a little bit on what is the reasonableness of the whistleblower's outcome that she's looking for. And I think she's quite credible, quite moderate, and I think her suggestions are pretty obvious and banal. They're not very controversial at all, and we probably are all going to agree on them. But it's a really interesting set of clips that we're going to play for you today. Then we're going to get into a bombshell that dropped this morning. Scorpion Capital has done a short seller report on Ginkgo Bioworks. You may remember the CEO of Ginkgo Bioworks was on This Week in Startups, episode 1239, and we got into his business model, which I thought at the time sounded really clever. However, Scorpion Capital is claiming that business model is a giant fraud, a scam, a hoax, and that Ginkgo Bioworks is their big short, and they're down 20% today. This is a really dicey one that involves a concept called round tripping that you should know about, that AOL was accused of 20 years ago. And we're going to unpack it all on today's This Week in Startups. Stick with us. Rate my intro, everybody. Everybody's in the chat room. Rate my intro. First one was what of 10. The second one was what of 10. I felt like I went from a 6 of 10 to an 8.5 of 10. Not my best, but it was okay. It was tight. All right. So second take is even better. Yeah, that's why I do 2 takes.
137 upvotes.
Oh God, that's 5
likes.
questions. My Lord, Jesus. You know what the thing is? The Noti Gang, I think, let me ask you this, Noti Gang, to all my YouTube Noti Gang members and LinkedIn Noti Gang members, wherever you watch this. Are you working right now and just listening to me in the background? Is that what's happening here? Like I go on, you guys just click the notification, you listen to me in the background while you're getting stuff done when you're GSDing. Is that the dynamic we've come to? I think that's what's happening. I think it's like kind of cool. Because sometimes I'll have CNBC on the background. I kind of feel like we made a little mini CNBC here. Yes, I'm at work. Yep, yes. There it is. See? Dual monitor. Very nice. All right. So I need questions. There was a big Twitch hack. I did see the big Twitch hack today. All right, where are my questions? Did you make a thread for questions, Rachel? Rachel, why don't you come on air and just tell me what question you want me to take, and then I'll do the questions. Or you can give me the choices. Or any of you can come on air and say,
All right.
do this question. Let me hear your question.
All right, looking through them now. I did thread the questions. I'm going to go back to the thread at the top. I think Justin put in a really good one.
Oh, I found it.
Justin, limiting people's use of digital life be good. Only a certain amount of likes, shares, characters, etc. per day.
Okay, this is a great question. So our first question for today comes from user. Oh God, I can't read it over here.
Dusty Green.
Do me a favor, put into the Slack room, the giant Slack room, the question, not in the thread, but just in the main twist taping room, the actual question, because then I can read it. Because when it comes up on the tiny screen here, I can't actually see it. Okay, here. And let's put it on the screen as well. Here we go, 3, 2. Okay, our first question is, would limiting people's use of digital life be good? Only a certain amount of likes, shares, characters, etc. per day, from Dusty Green. This is an excellent suggestion, Dusty. Yes, giving people a certain amount of karma to give out to other users would, in fact, throttle the amount of virality in these networks. However, that would work against their obvious financial incentives. And a lot of crypto people have pointed out, maybe you should pay a certain amount. So if you paid $10 a month for Facebook or for Reddit, you would get a certain number of upvotes. And you see this on YouTube now. There's something called Super Chat. So every time Knicks Fan TV comes on, they had the opening game of the Knicks. We were up by almost 30 points at some points in time. I'm not going to overhype it. It's just a preseason game, but the Knicks are winning 71 games this season. That's my prediction. No, it's not. 46 wins is my prediction. I think we'll be above 500. We're going to be a great team. Looked great last night, but you can give a Super Chat and then you get pinned to the top, right? And so there is a way to tie economic incentive to your amount of karma or participation you can do. And so I think that that's a clever idea, and it could actually make more money for them. So if you said, hey, let's just put a ton of let's incorporate crypto into this, I think that's why Zuckerberg was looking into doing crypto. A big ramification of what we're seeing with Facebook is the fact that their crypto project has been essentially neutered, throttled. I don't want to say DOA because who knows where its status is in, but they were supposed to have this crypto, Libra thing was going to change the world. And where is it? I think that they have so much influence in the world, Facebook, that they're like replacing the monetary supply when we're screwing up elections and people perceive us to be screwing up kids. They don't want us touching the money next. Like you screwed up democracy, our children, and now you're going to screw up, and you screwed up Thanksgiving, and now you're going to screw up the monetary supply. No, thank you, Facebook. So that's a real world ramification. Okay, let's take another question. Just go ahead and throw it up. I can actually read it now. I went full screen. Oh God, hold on. The dog's barking, everybody. Dog barking. Live on air, dog barking. Dog barking. That's Max barking. Okay, I hear footsteps. Somebody's getting it. Okay. 3-2. A follow-up question from Dusty Green. Is Robinhood, et cetera, allowing retail people to buy into SPACs now, adding fuel to the fire? Okay, SPACs are public. You can buy them on any platform. So I think that's independent of Robinhood. What you might be referring to here is Robinhood giving access to IPOs at the IPO price with equal footing. And I think that doesn't apply to SPACs, which come out at $10 always, I think, as the tradition is. And then they go find something to buy. So I think SPACs don't work.
Yeah, you can price SPACs at whatever you want. I think Bill Ackman priced theirs at $20, but the SPACs are mergers, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
this is the early access. He's talking to 3-2. So you're talking about the early access program. That's to make it possible for you to buy Uber or Airbnb at the price they went public at, just like the insiders at Goldman Sachs or high net worth individuals are able to. So kind of two different things. I do think ultimately people are getting educated, and what we're seeing here in the market is just a really big education for people who are placing bets. I believe people should be allowed to place bets. I believe the best way to learn how to not lose money is to lose some money doing stupid stuff. So if you bought Nikola, if you bought, whatever company that collapsed because they didn't have a real product and you took a leap of faith, well, guess what? Now you're in my business. I take leaps of faith every day investing in very little traction. And now the public can do it too. Am I going to tell you, you can't do it? You're too stupid? No, I'm going to tell you, be careful. Make it a small percentage of your net worth. I would say 1 to 5%, maybe 1 to 10% for highly speculative investments. Why would you make it 10% or less? Why would I advise that you keep highly speculative investments to 10% or less of your portfolio? I would do that because if you lost it all, which is a possibility, you're not going to miss it, right? It's only 10%. You can make it back if you're doing 7% a year in just over a year. So keep that in mind, folks. Be careful out there. For every really highly speculative investment you make, maybe you make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 safer bets and have some diversification in your portfolio. Seems to be the best advice in the financial world, is to be diversified, not concentrated. If you want to have outlier results, sure, be concentrated, but understand that's like going to the, roulette table and just betting it all on black and like, okay, see what happens. Could be dangerous. Okay, let's take another question. Just throw it up on the screen. I'll just read it and you guys can decide if we keep it. Just don't ask me questions about Elon.
There are two really good questions in the
The reason I say that is like, obviously I'm friends with them and like you guys ask me all these questions and then it eventually becomes like some press person is going to re-aggregate it and say like, Elon's friend Jason said X. I'm like, I don't need that nonsense in my life. So this is not the Elon News Network. I regret ever talking about the SNL experience on All In, because now that has just led to everybody asking me to do a favor for them where Elon solves whatever problem they have in their life. It's really annoying. It's like, can you just let him concentrate on space and cars? And I am not his personal secretary. Sorry. We're just friends. That's it. Just like Sachs and Chamath and I are friends. Okay. Go ahead, put a question up. I don't care. Have you ever, Will Boardman asks, how have you overcome dyslexia throughout your life? Dyslexia gang. It's a good question. I didn't know I had it. My mom told me that I took an experimental, she had allowed us to do an experimental way of learning how to read in the 70s when I learned how to read. I don't know the name of it. And she thinks that might have made it worse for me. But I didn't realize it until, I was in my 30s and I just somebody had to explain to me there, and there again, or two, and two again. And the way I was able to fix this was I asked people around me to tell me when I mispronounced something and to tell me when I misspelled something. And then I would take the time to write down in a book, there, THEIR, THEY apostrophe RE, THERE. And I would just write it. I would write it and see it and say it out loud. And when I would write it and say it out loud, it would click for me. And now my actual grammar and vocabulary have all skyrocketed since I just started writing and saying things out loud. So for some reason, for me, when I speak something and I type it and I see it. So I'm having all modalities at once. It kind of gets me through it. So it's as simple as that. And then I'm not embarrassed about the fact that I mispronounce names, because sometimes when I get it right, I can say polyhopatia over and over again, and it just clicks for me. It just takes a little more time and thoughtfulness. And there's also a piece of software called Hemingway app and another one called Grammarly. And they were unlocks for me, because when I started running things through grammar or text to speech, this was actually a key for me. I started using text to speech like decades ago, and I would pay for like Dragon software when it was really expensive. It was like desktop software. Now it's built into, every operating system because of accessibility. And if you turn on accessibility on your phone, you can get a little overlay that will let you highlight any text and turn it into speech. When you hear something as a dyslexic person that you misspelled, it's clear as day. I don't know if every dyslexic person is like that, but I know I am. When I read it, it makes sense to me, but then I hear it, I'm like, oh, that's wrong. And so then I was like, okay, so from now on, when I wrote the book, I would literally take out a microphone and I would speak the chapter, and then I would go for a walk and I would listen to it. And if it didn't sound right to me, I would think about another way to say it. That was a way for me to workshop to be a more compelling writer, but it was also a way for me to get through the dyslexia stuff. So I never went to any kind of dyslexia training or anything, but I think you can make up for it with other aspects, which is if you're a good writer, if you have a great vocabulary, if you're knowledgeable, if you're well-spoken, if you don't and ah, everybody's got their particular, challenges. And so some people say, or they and ah. I don't do that anymore. So, and my vocabulary's gotten better and better, and I'm funny. I can make a quick joke. I can think on the fly. So you can make up for whatever your weakness is. I think you just work on the other things, right? So like if you're just not good at, if you're Dennis Rodman and you're just not a good shooter, like become the world's greatest rebounder and be the guy who frustrates the other team's best offensive player, right? You can, Draymond Green, and I'm friendly with Draymond, and like, I've talked about this very issue with him. Every summer he like gets better at something. I don't know if you saw last year the number of assists he was putting up, but he was like had games with double-digit assists all the time. What was Draymond's assists last year or the year before? I mean, he's got to have 5, 6, 7 assists a game, I think. And for his position, I think it would normally be 2 or 3, right? So I was very impressed with his ability to add something new to his game. All right, let's do another question from the audience.
9 assists a game last year.
He had 9? He averaged 9?
8.9, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
But who's number 1 in assists in the league? Chris Paul with how many? I mean,
that's like, last year it was.
I mean, where does he rank?
Question.
How many people rank 9 or better? That's crazy.
Right, hold on, give me a second.
Sorry, for a neophyte here, is that good or bad?
That's otherworldly. An assist is when you pass the ball to somebody and immediately after, because of it, you get the ball in the basket.
So he was 6th in the league in total assists last year, behind Chris Paul. Behind Westbrook was 1, Paul was 2,
that's in
Jokic
total.
was 3. Total assists, right?
Not average.
Hold on.
So assists per minute would be actually the most interesting one, because if he played 35 minutes a game, what's his assists per minute? I mean, oh my Lord. I think his assists per minute is going to be pretty extraordinary. That's what I always
per game. He was 4th.
Oh wow! So even better. So he's 4th per game, and then if you did it by minute, there's that little column on ESPN where you can do assists per minute, or rebounds per minute, or blocks per minute. When you look at blocks per minute, Mitchell Robinson of the Knicks, because he was playing so few games because he was hurt all the time, or you look at Porzingis, they would be like in the top 5 all the time, but they couldn't stay on the court. So it's a very
you mean per 36?
Oh, that's what they do it per 36 minutes?
Per 36 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the per minute rates are kind of interesting.
Draymond was 10.1 assists per 36 minutes last year.
What?
3rd in the league.
Yeah. 3rd in the league. So see how fun with statistics, right? You always have to think about how you frame statistics. He gets better and better based on those other statistics I said take a look at. And I don't know where he was in his first couple of years in the league, but it was not 10. I mean, you realize that's like Chris Paul, Rondo, Steve Nash level assists. There's very few people who've hit those numbers. Okay. Let's do another question. How many? This is my third question I'm doing right now. So here we go.
I think this is fourth.
Okay. Alex Fletcher says, "Hey, Jason, what are common salary ranges for seed stage founders you've seen?" Okay, seed stage, for those of you who don't know, would mean you've probably raised, we're saying it's a seed funded company. So let's just say a seed stage company would typically raise 750 to 3 million. So we'll pick a number, 1.5 million. They would typically have a team of 6 or 7 people. 6 or 7 people, the salaries are 90% of what you're going to spend, and you want to have 18 months of runway. 18 months of runway into 1.5 million is about 90K a month, 80K a month. Let's put it at 80K a month. You got 78 people. Like I said, that means 10K per person all in. The variable for your benefits is typically a plus 15 to 25% on your salary, which means you're netting out to 7 to 8K per month per employee of cash compensation, 2 or 3K per employee in non-cash compensation benefits. That means 7.5K a month times 10 months is 75 plus another 15 is 90K. 90K is reasonable. Yeah, I would say. If you went to your VCs or your seed investors and said, I'm going to pay myself 90K, and I have got 8 employees, and there's a developer getting paid 125, and there's some sales execs or product managers getting paid 50, 60, 70, that would be, I think, in the range. Now, that's not Facebook level, Google level, or Silicon Valley level. This is working from home. This is working outside of the major city known as San Francisco. And so these are low salaries. People typically take a hit on their salary to work at a startup because they get options. And so that would explain it. And in another world, when I was coming up in startups, it was pretty typical for a founder to do something called a draw. I don't recommend this, but they would take a 2K, 3K a month draw. In other words, you take 2K, 3K in cash out of the company every month. And, you shouldn't do this because you're supposed to pay taxes, you're supposed to pay income tax. The IRS doesn't like you doing this, but they'd say, I take a 2 or 3K draw just to pay my expenses. And they would put their apartment or something against those expenses. You really don't want to do that. I've seen people do this, and I've had to tell them clean this up and pay your taxes. That should be income, and you should pay income taxes on it. When you pay your personal expenses from a draw, you're basically circumventing the income tax law. And Leona Helmsley, I think that's what she got busted for eventually, was she was putting all of her personal expenses on her companies. Can't do that. You could do it, you could buy a lunch here or there. You could take 1/3 of your apartment if that was your workspace, and you can talk to your accountant about that. I think you can take a percentage of your workspace and make that tax deductible. But back in the day, people expected a founder to take no salary in some cases, or 50K a year, and that everybody in the company would be paid more than the founder. And you would be ramen profitable, or you would basically take a salary or a draw that was equivalent to enough for you to eat ramen. But we're in a peak market right now with peak entitlement and peak amount of money slushing around. I've seen founders pay themselves 150K. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of the seed investors. It feels like you're flushing a lot of money very quick, and maybe you should take 90K and put that 60K towards an incremental sales executive or an SDR. Or if you've got SDRs offshore and they cost 30K or 25K, maybe you get 2 offshore SDRs, sales development reps. So that's really what you're looking for, is a thoughtful process for picking that salary. And listen, sometimes the person's got 3 kids and a mortgage, and they can only be an entrepreneur if they have a 200K salary. And some venture firms will be like, okay, we want to see you be a founder, and we're willing to do that. So it's a discussion with your investors. If it's above 100K, I'd say, for a seed stage startup, I'd have a little discussion with your top investors. Hey, here's my thinking. Are you comfortable with that? And it's really about you being thoughtful about the runway and hitting your milestones and keeping the company solvent. If the company's solvent, you're making money, nobody really cares until it hits 250. When it hits 250, it's like, whoa, this is a big number. Like you're working at Google or Facebook, and startups are supposed to be the opposite of that. Okay. I'm just telling you the reality. It's not my personal view necessarily. Okay, that's 4 questions. How many upvotes are we at? Are we above 125? So I should do one more. I think that was 4 questions. I think I owe the audience one more.
153. We are at.
Fuck. 2 more. Okay. All right, guys.
We got to start editing this too.
Yeah. So. 1 more thumbs up, guys. 2 more questions and then we're done. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh boy. What advice? This is from. Oh, here we go. Bob G. Hey, Jason. What advice did you receive that has been most valuable to you in your career? Don't be a schmuck. My book agent, John Brockman, told me, don't be a schmuck. And that was pretty good advice. Don't be stupid, you moron. What's another piece of advice? I thought good advice I got was actually from my book agent, John Brockman. He did tell me, don't be a schmuck. But he said, like, hey, you've arrived. You don't have to fight anymore. It's a key learning for me, which was, I was like this, bulldog from Brooklyn. I looked at the entire world was against me. I had to battle everybody to get where I had to be. And it turned out like sometimes when you win, this is the advice I've given to other people, building on the advice I got, which was in victory, be magnanimous. And I say this very often to friends of mine. And it would be the advice I would give to Zuckerberg and Facebook and to the team over there. In victory, be magnanimous. You guys won. You won. You made all the money in the world. Every possible goal you have set, you've exceeded. In victory, be magnanimous. That's my advice to everybody. When you've won, tone it down. Stop fighting everybody. Be magnanimous. Be generous. Be kind. Be thoughtful. Doesn't mean you can't keep winning, but in victory, be magnanimous. There's little gestures here, that you can make with people. You're taking your team out or you're taking your friends out to dinner. When I take my friends out, I don't let anybody pay the bill. Now, when I'm out with my friends who are crazy rich compared to me, and they're like, hey, JCal, can I give you a ride on my plane back from Vegas or to wherever? I'm like, sure. And I don't feel bad about it. Yeah, that's a nice gesture for them to make to me. But, I can afford my business class ticket now. It's not a big deal. I'm thrilled to be in business class. I'll be totally honest. To me, I pinch myself. Oh my God, I'm in first class. I flew first class to Italy. I was like, felt guilty. Like literally, that's what I deal with. I deal with my blue collar guilt. I just bought, first class ticket to Italy, and I had to like really talk myself down off a ledge for that extravagance, which is not an extravagance for me anymore. But I still think like a poor person. I'm just like $5,000 for a first class round trip ticket, or $4,000, whatever it was. I was like, I don't know if I can spend this. This feels wrong to me. I was like, I don't think I have to worry about that anymore. So treat yourself and don't feel bad about it, but be magnanimous. Like it's amazing to me, people who are not. I had a friend who was a really shitty tipper and would invite people over their house and would collect money for the pizza we ordered. And I was like, to my friend, I just said, like, we're sitting in your $25 million house and you just asked everybody to throw in a $10 chip to pay for the pizza, or $25. So are you fucking crazy? Do you know how bad you look? And then you're tipping 20%, and you live in a $25 million house, and the pizza guy just came into your house across your tennis court and you're giving him a 20% tip? I was like, dude, funny story. Same guy. He's a really good friend of mine. He's totally become the opposite now. He's absurdly generous, gives ridiculous tips. I mean, and he's always been a mensch. He just had a blind spot. Sometimes you have a blind spot. I have blind spots. You have blind spots. Blind spot was just the way he thought about money and, fairness. And he came over to my house, and I had a poker game. I hosted the poker game. And, I'm in like whatever. My house costs a tenth of what his cost in LA. And I hired a chef to make Wagyu burgers and lobster. What do you call those lobster sandwiches you get? Lobster tail sandwich? I don't know.
Lobster roll.
Lobster rolls. I was like, I'm going to spend $500 on dinner. And I think I gave the chef $300. I spent like $1,000. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to splurge. I have my friends over. Fuck it. I'm going to get Johnny Walker Blue, lobster rolls, freshly made, and Wagyu burgers all to order. My friend was like, this is incredible. This lobster roll is amazing. I was like, yeah, here's Jen. Chef Jen made them. And so then I'm at my friend's house, and he's like, hey, can you sign for the pizza? I put it on my card. I was like, oh, I could sign for the pizza. I go to the guy, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He says, nice place you got here. I said, it's not mine, but thanks. So what's the biggest tip you ever got? He said, oh, New Year's Eve. The guy gave me $50. I said, guy gave me $50 on pizza. How much was the check? He's like, it's like $150. He gave me a $50 tip. It's like 33%. I said, wow. I said, what's this one? He said, it's $125. I said, okay. $125 tip. I just gave a 100% tip. I said, now you have a new record. Hand it back to him. I handed it back to my friend. My friend said, did you tip him? I said, oh, yeah, I tipped him. How much you tip him? I was like, it's the best tip you ever gave. Leave it at that. So I taught my friend how to tip. Anyway, be magnanimous is like your original question. Be magnanimous in victory. If you are lucky enough to be victorious, you don't have to put it in people's faces. Just be magnanimous. Like I really try to be magnanimous in all this stuff. Like when I get a speaking gig, if somebody pays me 30, 40, 50 grand to go around the world and speak somewhere, I bring like 2, 3, 4 of my friends and team members, so Matt or Presh, other folks in the team. I think Nick, you came with me to, Nick came to Australia and we went and we stayed at Hamilton Island. We went wave running. We went to the Whitsundays beach. It's like, be magnanimous. It's like, if I'm going to go to the beach, if I'm going to splurge on jet skis, I'm taking my team to go on wave runners. Fuck it. Like, who cares? I'm rich. It's like, do it. And, it could be small gestures. You could just be buying the next pint, or you go to a Knicks game, pick up the tab. That's it. Be magnanimous in victory. It's like one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever given people, and the best kind of piece of advice I got that I built on, right? And I think that's really important, to be a good friend to people and tell them when they have a blind spot. There's some certain friends where, like, by the way, you got a hair growing out of your nose, you got a piece of spinach in your teeth, or by the way, your breath smells really terrible. Here's a mint. Those are the friends you want in life, and that's the friend you want to be, right? Do you have the ability to say to a friend, hey, by the way, you got a hair sticking out of your ear, just gotta pluck it out. You look like a grandpa. Like, please say that. If you see that in me, if you see me, like if a hair starts growing out of my ear in some weird way, please tell me. Just DM me. Hey, Jake Al, you look terrible. You look great. Whatever. Clip the hair coming out of your ear. All right. The journey matters. All right. Let's take one more. I have one more to go. Please tell me these maniacs didn't get to 175 thumbs up. Please tell me they didn't get to 175.
165.
Oh, thank God. All right. Final question. Because if you get to 175, I got to do another one. This is from Richard Wu on the live stream. I don't know if he's part of the Noti gang, but he's here. If you're starting a company now, would you go full remote, hybrid, or full in office, at least initially? Great question. I think if it's you and 2 people, being in the same space is pretty cool. If you're already in the same city and spending some time together is a really good idea. I think being hybrid or fully remote means you don't have to be geographically bound for new hires. And that is such an unlock. We hired Justin and Rachel to become producers on the show. If we had said to them, you have to move to San Francisco, I'm not sure producer Rachel and producer Justin are coming to San Francisco. I'm just not sure. And you know what? It's super expensive to live in San Francisco. I may not want them to live in San Francisco because entry-level job or, first 2-year out of school job, just it's not possible to live in San Francisco or Hong Kong or, London, right? It's better they work from home. It's better they remove the commute. And so I would go hybrid is my answer is hybrid. The 2 founders, 3 founders who are grinding it out and who are doing product designs, I think it's really good to have be in the office space together, give you an advantage, maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and then everybody else remote, as long as they're getting stuff done. I do wonder if certain teams are in the office together and they all live very close to the office, if they will have an advantage versus a competitor straight up. I don't have the answer to that. I'm open-minded to it. But let's face it, all the statistics are showing that performance is going up and efficiency is going up dramatically. If it was a 5 or 10% gain, I would probably say just, we should all be going back to offices, but I'm seeing 20 to 50% gains anecdotally in how these startups are running. They're lowering costs 20%. They are cutting hiring times by 50%. They are decreasing the amount of turnover by 50%, maybe 25%. All of these things add up to a company that moves faster. I see it in the launch company that does This Week in Startups and our investments in the syndicate. Like, we're able to hire people. People don't quit. People are not burnt out. People are happier. People are more efficient. And we don't have all this in-office expense. It's just wonderful. I mean, I am absolutely blown away by the efficiency gains. And I think the efficiency gains would not have worked if we didn't collectively all do this at the same time. So I think you could have been right that hybrid work from home was not a good idea pre-pandemic. But if everybody does it, and everybody has Zoom cams and a great setup at home, and really good podcasting setups, microphones, etc., and the technology becomes this good, it kind of feels like this is permanent. It feels like this is permanent. I do think that people are losing their minds, though, and there's a whole series of mental health issues associated. I mean, it's pretty clear with social isolation. So we're going to need to work on that. People are going to need to get out of their houses. I wonder if with my producers, if any of them have had an experience of staying home for 3 or 4 days in a row and not seeing people. Does that happen, Justin or Rachel or Nick?
Definitely. Yeah.
You've had
100%.
You've had a 3-day stretch where you haven't seen anybody?
Yep.
Yeah, see, that's not
Yes.
healthy. I've had it too, and I can tell you it's not healthy. And so that's the thing where you're going to have to rely on your social life. And a lot of people relied on their work to kind of build a large portion of their social fabric. You're all need to join a book club or, find a pub or join a band. I don't know, do something where you're not just, at your computer from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., watching Netflix, going to bed, and not taking a shower for 3 days. And all of a sudden, Monday turns into Thursday and you're like, what happened? I didn't do anything. That's why for me, going to poker or traveling again, going down to the Code conference and hosting my poker game with Brooke and Sky was so important for me because I was having a week. I would Sunday, I would take the kids out, but then Monday through Friday, I would not go out. And I realized I've been in my house for 5 days in a row. This is getting weird. I think you get very weird. Okay. We didn't get to 175. Please tell me we didn't get to 175.
Oh, I think we blew past that, didn't we?
Oh, no. All right. I'll take this Sam McDonald question. But
We got to start editing the show if we ever.
All right. This is the last one. I don't care how many more thumbs up. This is it, guys. I'm done. Sam McDonald says, I saw a video recently where the creator said it could argue Theranos was successful because 95% of the initial investors got out before the controversy. Any thoughts? 95% of the initial investors got out before the controversy. Any thoughts? Maybe they sold their shares in secondary is what this claim is. I don't think that is the definition of being successful. The definition of being successful is making a product or service that delights customers and solves a real problem for them or makes them really entertained and happy. And Theranos spent, I think, 15 years, over $500 million, 15 years, $500 million, and never had a product or service that worked. So to look at that and say it's anything other than a fraud, it's not a failed experiment when you spent $500 million in 15 years and had to deal with Walgreens and we're doing all these tests and it actually never worked. It was a straight up fraud. I mean, she might get off. It doesn't mean it wasn't a just huge fraud, ginormous fraud. Like if you spent 5 years and 50 million, it didn't work out. It's one thing, but they were at this for a long time. They knew it didn't work. They knew they weren't close. Anybody who worked in blood testing previously and had anybody who made billions of dollars a year off of it said it didn't work. And it wasn't like, if you were to compare it to, say, a electric car company, with the electric car company, they did deliver a $150,000 roadster that you could drive and be delighted and laugh your head off like a kid on a roller coaster. And they did deliver the Model S. And both of those were delivered in under 10 years and for far less money than I think Elizabeth Holmes had done. So, if Elizabeth Holmes had done a test with a smaller vial of blood that just absolutely got your vitamin C correct or absolutely got your vitamin D or your, did an HIV test or a hepatitis test. And she said, listen, there's 150 tests we want to do, and we've got 4. You'd say, okay, okay, great. $500 million. You got 4 nailed. Great. Let's see you do the next 4 for another 500 million. Let's see you do the next 4 for 100 million. Let's see if you can be more efficient. Then it would have been demonstrable, milestone-based success and funding. And that's really what Silicon Valley does well. We do milestone-based funding. You prove that you have some skills and you write a business plan and you build a mock-up. You might get 100 to 200K from friends and family. You build an MVP, you get 5 customers using it, paid, unpaid, whatever, trials, reference customers. Okay, you get your seed round, 1 million to 3 million. Then you do it again and you get to 100 customers and 50K a month in revenue. And now you get your $10 million Series A. Milestone-based funding. Theranos didn't do milestone-based funding. It was milestone-based funding. They just got all this money and it was scam and it was fraud-based funding. They just lied to people, and then people never actually saw the products, right? So if you're fabricating the results of the blood test, that's not milestone-based. That's fraud-based. And I think that's what we've learned about that case. And we'll see if she gets off. Justice system is imperfect. We might have one of the better justice systems that humanity's created to date in the Western world, but it's not perfect. So I'm interested to see where that winds up. We should have John Carreyrou on. Can we book John Carreyrou for next week, maybe to just talk about where the case is at? I haven't been really following it because it seems like it's incredibly boring. All right. We'll see you all next time in This Week in Startups. To my Noti gang, I love you.